Good evening, everybody. I'm here with Danny. We're looking forward to game week 10. I've been ready. I've got prepared. Just had the haircut. It took absolutely ages, which is why it was relatively late this evening. Had the cue in music. I was actually it's this here if anyone's interested. A bit of John Coltrane and Kenny Burrell, a very skilled jazz guitarist. Anyway, for any of you who like that, nice cultural reference for you. More importantly, how are you, Danny?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks, mate. All things considered. Had a busy week. I've got a bit of a cold. My voice sounds all right, actually. I could barely
Does
speak.
sound good, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds all right now. But yeah, it's good. Just had a little walk, a bit of a chill. Looking forward to chatting some FPL because I've not had all that much chance to think this week, really. So I'm looking forward to the questions and whatever comes up and freestyling and what you think about a few things.
I can already feel, like if I was a viewer, I'd be instinctively more interested in you and your process than mine. No one's really interested in me. But for you, the pre-match walk, the getting the head in the zone, I could just imagine, a bit like one of those players coming off the coach, the AirPods in.
You always do a pre-match walk.
I do as well.
You always do.
It's important to us to have our pre-match walk, and a bit like what was it? In the Damn United, like Leeds used to walk the last sort of couple of 100 yards to the ground or something. That's me and Danny before the game, getting ready. Difference is we don't sort of foul everyone constantly throughout the actual game itself. But I shouldn't upset. I should say I shouldn't upset Leeds fans. We do have a few Leeds fans who follow this, so I should try and be careful what I say. And of course, they are one of the teams who've been beating up on West Ham lately. Don't get me started on that. I don't know when that's going to kick in tonight's pod, but my God, it's been hard work. 2 years of hideousness, and this is the worst of it, if you're a West Ham fan anyway. And of course, what's worse, by the way, is that Brentford is round the corner from where I live. I could just support a lovely, well-run team who I'm very fond of, but no, nothing like that. Good time to be a Man United fan, Danny.
I wouldn't go that far.
But that's sort of better than
a good time is a good week. A good week to be a Man United fan. Yeah, that's about as far as we go at the moment. But no, it's nice. It's nice. Yeah, we'll have to talk about United a bit tonight. I mean, I've been, much happier / positive, / optimistic ever since we signed 2 of the best players in the Premier League. And 2 of my favourite players in the Premier League. It's just it's lovely. So can't.
And even the ones that were looking a bit dodgy are starting to come to the party as well. Sesko started to get a bit of, good feeling from people and that sort of thing as well. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good time. I mean, put it this way, from where I'm sitting, which is a horrible chair with, I can't think of anything interesting to say here. It's not a good position to sit in. You look like you've got a very comfy chair at this point in time. So there you go. Let's say hello to the chat before we go too much further. Our good friend Easy, who sends us lovely questions and comments every week. He's 1 beer down already. The man, he's preparing. He's in for a session here, Danny. So don't let him down. He's been preparing all afternoon for this. What else have we got? Show your faces. We've got Heather, who's in County Clare in Ireland. I was just inquiring as to what part of lovely Ireland she's from, because I was there over the summer. Lots of affection for Ireland. Our good friend Gareth as well, with the lovely Lurch picture. We got Eno, who's back this week. I'd be interested. I can't remember how Eno's doing actually, and how his team is. So hopefully he'll let us know. He's looking at a pre-AFCON strategy, very, very wise. Lots of other people as well, Iron Cupboard and so on.
I have to say, we've got Global Sports Car Investor, I think, whatever it is called, who's watching from Melbourne, 5:30 in the morning there. That's commitment.
That is commitment. And also, if you have a global sports car that you want to send us, we are susceptible to bribery. I'm rocking something quite boring and outside. It's not a sports car anyway. So I don't know about you, Danny.
It says sports card actually, doesn't it? So are they collectibles? Yeah, no, I didn't see that either. So
Haaland not in the squad tonight as well. We got that news across, so that's interesting. I don't think he was expected to play, but nevertheless, So get your captains ready. Those of you who have got sort of Saka or Bruno or something, that's probably something that we might talk about later.
Arteta's been rested, which is good
news
for owners.
/ very lucky for anyone who's got early. Who would do such a thing?
Yeah, that's a bit annoying. That as a non-owner, I'm a bit worried now. But there we are. Never mind.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know where this one comes from. Which one of you is a Papa Roach fan? Well, I can tell you for sure as hell, it's not me. New Metal. That phase lasted about 5 minutes for me. That's for sure.
Yeah, you can still listen to a couple of their tunes. It's nostalgic. A couple of tunes from the early 2000s, whatever it was, late 90s.
Kind of reputation here, Danny. I can't be listening to new metal when I've got sort of this kind of stuff going on. I need to stay classy. People, tune in for this kind of stuff. No, do you know what I do remember though? I'm trying to think how I was. 16, 17. Oh yeah. Thank you. Someone did say, okay, yeah. To be fair, thank you very much. Last Resort was their hit. Yeah, it was. For anyone who is interested in kind of the naming of this pod, yeah. I can't sing it, but yeah, it was.
Life in 2 pieces. This is my last resort.
You were even younger. Danny's a little bit younger than me. Some of you might be surprised. I'm only joking. But you would have been a sort of young teenager when that came out.
I can't remember. It all blurs into one, but yeah, probably about 15, 16. I don't know when it came out.
Yeah, very exciting. But Last Resort, the other reference, if you do remember that, is that it is the name of the bar in. I've already forgotten. What's the film?
Oh my god, you made me go blank now. Total Recall.
Total Recall, which I do really love, so I can't remember why I didn't remember. But yeah, it's the bar in Total Recall with all the sort of.
And it's one of the best levels in one of the old Halo multiplayers. So it's a lot of things.
Do you know what? That is where it sort of came from, isn't it? Because you know more about that kind of thing than me. But
yeah.
Anyway, because back in the day we were sort of quite self-disparaging and not confident in ourselves, and you'd only come to us if it was the last resort, blah blah blah. So there was a little bit of an in-joke there as well. Hopefully we've maybe stemmed that. Perhaps we are a bit better now. I don't know. You can say what you like. Quick one actually before we move on. I know I keep banging on, but General Zod as well, Ken, who's a good fan of that film as well. So I'm just saying hello because I can't remember what the exciting event that Ken has had going on in his life. It's your daughter's graduation or something like that. Well, congratulations if it is that, Ken. If I've misremembered or something. Please tell me off later. Anyway, let's try and be a bit quicker. Time to reset. So this is quite an exciting. Danny's coming up with. He's rolling out the great titles at the moment, so that's quite exciting. But time to reset. A new week, a new opportunity. So for those of you who are thinking it's over before it's begun, actually this is quite an interesting time. We have to use our transfers, before the kind of AFCON reset. Lots of people were changing squad structures, so there's quite a lot going on. So yeah, definitely part of what we're going to discuss tonight. And of course, a bit of Mbuemo on the screen there. He's been absolutely awesome lately, isn't he? He has all season really, to be fair, but it's just coming together a bit. And of course, lots of people very interested. I think he's had 2 price rises this week, isn't he? You would know.
Has he had 2? No, I think he's only had 1. Otherwise, I would have got it because I went. Well,
I'm sure he had 1 right.
Yeah, but the deadline was on Friday, so he might have had 1. Yeah, he might have
have been on Friday. Yeah. It was Friday.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay.
So Friday and a couple of days ago. And
I didn't even know he went up on Friday. Actually.
Yeah. Because he's 8-2 now.
Yeah. Well, obviously, United players always famously they tend to rise faster, don't they? Because there's so many fans.
Yeah. People like them. Just a quick update on the mini league. So John Hilton top. I think Zach Farnell, who with Farnell score with his team, very exciting. He I hadn't necessarily noticed his name before, but he's shot up to second now. But there's a new name in there down at number. It's number 6 because there's 2 equal fourths, if that makes sense. So Michael Young, his player of the week, he's managed an 84. Now you won't be able to read this on the screen because it's unbelievably small. But Michael, I'm not calling you out. I'm pleased for you. But he managed to get Pascal Struijk dropped out of his team, and Van der Ven came off the bench. Oh my God. You need to open a jam factory, sir.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
To be fair, at least he wasn't one of the ones who started Van der Ven. You know, just because I don't know why. I don't really know why anyone started Van der Ven. I don't want to, not to insult anyone. It's not that it was terrible or anything, but away at Villa when he's coming off the back of like 1-2, 1-1 or something.
Well, it was Everton away, wasn't it?
I mean, sorry, not Villa, Everton away. Sorry, yeah. Everton away. Though, I mean.
Still, yeah, it's not an easy. I suppose it's a lot of the people who I know that a lot of people have been saying, oh, actually, it's sort of dead teams and so on. I don't think it's quite. I mean, yeah, there are, but actually, I think a lot of people have kept faith as their defender or something. Maybe Anderson, obviously injured, and a few others injured. I should imagine quite a few were blocked off of it because obviously Gabriel rather was eventually fit. We'll talk about that later. Bloody Arteta. You know, because obviously I was meant to be here with 5 shiny transfers, you know, showing off this week. But of course, Arteta gave me a wobble. I had no defence on the bench. So for those of you who remember, no need to, but Romero was on my bench. He was injured. And Anderson was on the bench. He was injured. So it's one of those things where I was 0.1 off Munoz. Couldn't get to him. And a 0.1 off of doing Timber and Popin for 2 switches. So I ended up doing 4 moves, but we'll come to that later, and you can tell me off in the chat for being so trigger happy. But I don't know how I feel about it, Danny. We'll come to it later. I'm sort of, in a way, it's fine. I made some okay decisions, but there's another bit of me. You know, you thought I was that close to 5. I was quite excited about that, so I was just a little bit disappointed. But
it will be very interesting because it's a massive kind of fork in the road, wasn't it? And this slight comment, you know, and it's honestly we'll talk about it when we get there. But it could be great. It could not work out. You know, it could go either way. I mean, it's just so hard to say, but it is interesting for sure.
Arteta, by the way, you know, like we have a difficult relationship anyway, especially after the assistant manager chip last year and losing to Graham Potter and all that stuff. Anyway, we'll come to that. Just for those of you who are on audio, so LZKI6K is the code if you are still into this. I don't know, Danny and I will talk about it at some point, but perhaps I know I'll try and shorten this and so on. But people do like to hear that they're doing well. I'm definitely keen to keep picking out player of the week, so it gives everyone a chance to get their name heard and that sort of thing. And well done to those who are constantly in this top 6. Sean Claridge, John Edgar, and Paul Yerson amongst them as well. So well done. I don't know where we are, Danny. I should imagine we're in the depths. I have noticed, by the way. I think I told you earlier this week, Les, if he's listening, you know, I think we've been in a family mini league, my father-in-law, for sort of not 20 years, because it's not been that long, 18 years or something. And I might have lost once, I think, something like this. So it's a little bit nervy at the moment. He's following he's following all the more exciting sort of short form content creators, and he's 12th in our league. So I'm in trouble, I think. But there you go. Anyway, let's push on. So we're going to look at some of your questions, and there's some. I have to say, by the way, well done, chat, for sending in so many questions this week. The question quality is really, really good. There's so many that I've only actually selected 6 to go through, because there were so many good ones. If we have time later, there might be a few more, but I will do the best, and we'll try and get into the habit of remembering who sent the different questions. But if you see yours up there, we are genuinely very grateful, especially for. I know, Danny, you like to have like some of these questions earlier in the day so you can think about them on your walk and we can process them. So if you are sending in these questions, you know, have that lovely thought of, oh, Danny's on his walk thinking about my question. That's exactly what is going on and how we prepare. We're not slick, we're not proud with it. We need you to help us put together all this exciting stuff. So I'm going to start with the top one because it involves the main man at the moment and someone that you absolutely love. I mean, who doesn't love him, right? In Embuemo. So the question came in. It's an interesting one. So, is moving your Arsenal attacker to someone like Mbeumo allowing to go for triple Arsenal defence a good plan? I mean, what I'm going to do before I hand this over to you, I'll talk about it a little bit, because my plan, as you know, most of my thoughts about how to use 5 transfers, I was pretty keen on securing that three Arsenal defense route, etc. So I feel like I've sort of copped out here, because I now have Saka. And don't get me wrong, it's not exactly a kick in the balls, is it, to own Timber, Gabriel, and Saka? I mean, it probably is. I think it's not even probably is the best 3, isn't it? Like if you take value out of the equation, so no complaints on that score. But it's an interesting time, because I moved Arsenal assets around last week, and suddenly now everyone loves Raya, even though I've taken him out. So we have to think about what we like. What do you think? I mean, could you justify taking out an Arsenal attacker to fit Mbeumo in? Do you? I mean, you yourself retain an Arsenal attacker, as far as I remember, and you have interest in Mbeumo. I won't say too much about what's happened or what's happening, but do you want to kick us off on this one? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these questions I haven't seen yet until now. So I did have a look at the responses to the tweet, which is great. We should probably do a little bit better in terms of preparation than just going for a walk for 10 minutes beforehand and trying to think about stuff. But obviously, we both think about FPL a lot anyway, don't we? We think about FPL a lot, I suppose, on a good week. So that's usually works out itself. I need to put my phone down for a second because it's going off non-stop. I blame Baker. He's seen some updates on something. I mean, my short answer is I don't really like the idea of selling an Arsenal attacker to get Mbeumo in, unless you are set on wanting triple Arsenal defence, which I think we should probably talk about. Maybe that comes together in the same question. I know it's maybe it's on there. It doesn't matter anyway, but we'll talk about both. But unless that's the reason, for me, I would just feel like that would feel like I didn't know what my structure was, what my plan was, what price points I want, what you've got to really think about, flexibility and the implications of that. And I'm sure whoever's asking that question is thinking about the implications of that. Saka is also a price point, which is pretty significant, isn't it? That could be Palmer could come back in 3 or 4 weeks, whatever, or after the international. He could be great. He could not. Is that with someone like Bruno or someone else in that price point? So that's the short answer, really. Is I don't really like selling it for an Arsenal attacker unless you want to go triple defense, which I think is debatable. I mean, there's nothing necessarily wrong with it. I was trying to think about it before, and I'm not sure that I'm very keen on it, to be honest. Triple Arsenal defense, but I would try and find another way. Is the short answer? I mean, and I think there are lots of ways, and I think if you don't have a way, you don't need to do it now anyway. You don't. I mean, I guess there's a little bit of panic in here in this question because Mbeumo has been scoring lots of points, but he's a great pick, but he isn't much better than Gyökeres even, and he isn't better than Saka, sort of thing. Yeah. So it's one of those where you roll until you do have a way of doing it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, I have found who asked this question. It's our good friend Alex Ball, who is often. I think he's our resident New Zealander. He might correct me, in which case, hopefully, I haven't got the wrong person here. Pretty sure he wildcarded recently, last week or recently as well. So I think that's probably helpful context here. So he might be, as we often do, when you reroute or you use 4 or 5 transfers or you've wildcarded, sometimes you regret your structure a little bit and you think, oh, shall I just correct that mistake now? My simple answer to this one is, okay, there's nothing wrong with having triple Arsenal, obviously. There's also nothing wrong with having an Arsenal attacker and so on. I think, to my mind, okay, perhaps this is a very human answer, but if I had Saka before Burnley and Sunderland, yes, I know Sunderland are good and all that, right? If taking him out this week, you're readying yourself for a world of pain, right? There is the possibility that you could get this horribly wrong. Whereas with the difference being, let's say you add I don't know, probably Raya in a lot of cases, maybe Timber, etc. As your extra and your dumping Saka or Gyökeres. Probably Gyökeres is more common. There is a world of pain. I think it's the swing is much more likely to go against you there in the short term. I'd be tempted to think about this after the Burnley fixture at very least, but it really does depend as well on how many transfers you've got. If you were in a situation like I was last week, 4 last week, if I'd had 5 this week, and then you want to reroute your squad around, I think that's fair enough. I think, in that scenario, you're bringing in Mbeumo, maybe you're just dropping Gyökeres to Mateta, and you're also bringing in Mbeumo because you can go up from, I don't know, Enzo or someone like that to this pick here in Mbeumo. So I think that's perfectly fine. But in the broader sense, I don't know whether this is really the week that I would want to be dumping an Arsenal attacker. Even Gyökeres is perfectly good this week. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I was looking at it more and more last week, and if I was going to sell a player this week, as part of the plan, I was much more keen to get rid of Pedro this week than I was Gyökeres, to be honest with you. I would have been quite happy to keep Gyökeres for the next couple and to use Pedro as my make weight to get Mbeumo, etc. So that's kind of how I was thinking in that time. Yeah. I don't know if we can bring in, because obviously the second question there also talks about Gyökeres, so we can come into that, but I don't want to cut you off, Danny, sorry.
No, it's okay. Just a final point on that, and it's kind of repeating what I've already said, but I have like an aversion to questions like that sometimes, and it's obviously a subjective thing, but because I don't really, before I think about players, I'm always thinking about structure. I'm always thinking about the kind of meta of the structure that I want, because I think, it's easy to fall off in this game. It's easy to fall behind, get stuck behind with transfers, get stuck with players you don't want. And the easiest way to fall off and get into a real mess, and by the way, being in a mess in FPL is the worst thing in the world. It leads to terrible things, terrible decisions, big hits, losing behind on points, falling behind on points is horrible. And the easiest way to fall behind, I think, is to mess up your structure or not have a structure, or, not be within reaching distance of a good structure, or that kind of thing. So, and at the moment for me, without thinking much, I suppose it's always in the back of my mind, the structure for me is, for example, a big midfielder and a Mbeumo or a Bruno, or even both, or whatever. It's, for me, it's moving away from the strikers a bit at the moment, or not just a bit, quite a lot, to be honest. And so I've got that structure that I think not just is best and that I want, but is also what I foresee as being the most useful for the next 10 weeks. And I might be wrong. So a question like that at the top is just like completely ransacks that structure. And just for this idea of getting this player in, and the players for me come secondary to the structure, I think, you know what I mean? So I just look at that question and just go, sorry, and it's no offense or anything like that. I just think I can't compute that. I'm not interested in entertaining that, because I would want both. So yeah.
Do you know what? I think the other thing I'll say, I don't know how far you agree with this, Danny, but I do think, okay, so things move really bloody fast in this game. And I've already seen people this week, I've seen podcasts this week where there's definitely one where there was a suggestion that you should sell Timber in order to do something else. So I think someone was in a situation where that perhaps they wanted Munoz or something like this, and they could have perhaps Raya instead, etc. And I did the opposite move last week. I did Raya to Pope in order to get Romero up to Timber, for example, which was a good move. I'm quite happy with it, and I think most people probably would be. But things are moving pretty fast, and the advantage that Danny's talking about, I think, is that if you do have a Gyökeres or a Saka spot, for example, it is worth thinking, if we know that things move pretty fast, there's nothing to say in 2 weeks' time when Liverpool start their run, for example, that you might not just at least want the option, right? There's nothing wrong with holding a Saka or a Gyökeres spot through this, just to give yourself a little bit more information. And that's kind of where I would lean on this, because let's say you do get, I was thinking about Gakpo and Mbeumo in a certain structure, and that's still possible, I guess. But obviously he went off early, didn't he? 60-minute sub. at the weekend. And then I would really struggle to get Salah or another Liverpool spot that I might want or something like this. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but retaining that option is a strength. And that's why a lot of us, I mean, I know I have, I think, Danny, you might be interested in this as well, dumping one striker spot right down to the absolute kind of base floor, 4.2 or whoever it might be, has really given a bit of flexibility. So many people were talking me out of it last week, by the way. They were like, I don't think you're upgrading your squad. Your bench looks weaker as a result. I've used bench boost and I want these options. So it wasn't really a difficult decision to go right down to a nothing striker for me anyway. But slightly off topic, but that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. Can we just talk about the Gyökeres, because we will come to the cheap strikers in just a minute with the other striker question. So the patience on Gyökeres, I'd be interested then. Do you feel like you are retaining him because it's a structural value, or is it because of faith in player, or is it because you have faith in the fixture? Because we've had a question there. I think it's from Lewis Stevenson. There was another question that was pretty similar from East West Tiger. I've kind of bastardized their question into one, if that's okay. Patience on Gyökeres, how's it holding up? How many blanks is too many? Surely we can't justify selling before Burnley and Sunderland. So what do you think?
I mean, I'm holding on at the moment because I've got other priorities. And again, I'm trying to find the most efficient path to the structure that I want and putting out the biggest fires first. And obviously, I think it's a bit of a luxury move at the moment. I mean, it's fine. I mean, yours was a luxury move last week, and I like it. A luxury move doesn't mean a bad move. I mean, you made the switch. I don't mean luxury. I don't mean no. Just let me explain that for a second. I know yours were all one thing, but what I'm saying is, for most people, if ever you're doing that Gyökeres to Saka, for example, is still. Yeah, luxury might be the wrong word because I get it. Long term, I think Saka is a better pick, and it's fine. And it's a change of structure and stuff, and I might do that in a couple of weeks. But you still need to have some kind of base there. You need to have a good team. You need to have some transfers because it's a lot. I mean, Gyökeres as an individual, I've had the weirdest relationship. I quite like it when you have this sort of player who doesn't do anything and it doesn't actually bother you. I've still not felt hurt. I mean, I've been a bit obviously disappointed. I wish he'd got some points. I mean, this weekend Saka didn't either, so it's not like it could have hurt more. He's still an okay pick for now because he's Arsenal's striker, and maybe these games are a bit better for him, and he's getting chances, and he's playing really good minutes, and I just think you can see on his face that he has no confidence at the moment. I don't know. I think it's all just a bit of a shock to the system. Like I've said the same thing, so I don't want to repeat it, but it's a bit of a shock to the system coming to the Premier League and just going, oh shit! Like, can you question yourself a bit more? It's like I can't do the things I've been able to do my whole life. I just can't. It's just so hard. And then, like I said before, he's having to do so much else for the team. He kind of looks a bit knackered all the time. It's that thing that I've talked about before about that efficiency and of decision making and how to when to recharge, when to rest a little bit and stop running a little bit. But he knows he can keep running because he's got that baseline of performance. He's going to get a 7 out of 10 performance pretty much every game doing what he's doing because he's so useful for the team. And that's a comfort blanket. That means he can kind of go to bed at night and not be gutted that he hasn't got a goal because he knows he's helped the team. And you can just sort of see it in his eyes. It's a silly thing to say and it's just a subjective opinion. But I do feel a bit sorry for him. So I want to see him get a chance. But I mean, because he is a finisher and you can see it, and he's still an instinctive finisher. His head down sort of buries it, and it's just so you think he just needs to get that kind of first time shot. That kind of the second ball on one of these set pieces, for example, to fall to him, but like it did to Eze on the weekend, and it's getting buried. I'd be pretty confident of that. We're not talking about a Calvert-Lewin type here. So. And, again, and he's one of those players with the minutes and the fact that he's striker. And if he gets one, it could easily be 2 in that game. It could be 3, could be a couple in the, so he's got these fixtures. So, Gyökeres is what it is for me at the moment. But I don't, I might move him on in a couple of weeks after these couple of fixtures if I've got the transfers.
Yep.
But also because we'll talk about other strikers in a bit. Again, not just structurally and kind of that Saka's very good, for example, if you want to go there. But there are other cheaper strikers that I like a lot.
Yeah, I think
that gives it the push. That gives it that push of being like more than just selling Gyökeres for someone else.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because actually that is a really so often people forget that you're not. It's not just about who you're getting rid of, is it? It's who you're obviously. I know it's an obvious point, but I think I know who you're talking about. By the way, we'll come to that in a bit. But I think that window, so to speak, in 2 weeks' time, it does look pretty watertight at the moment. I'll be interested to see whether that kind of comes to pass in a couple of weeks' time. But it does look like a good window for that. I'm in a danger with this kind of question of being a bit sort of do as I don't do as I do as I say about it, because I can't help but feel if I had Gyökeres and I didn't have anything other than 4 or 5 transfers, I wouldn't be doing that move at the moment. I do genuinely feel there's a big gulf actually between whether you would sell Pedro this week and Gyökeres. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but if I had both this week and I was able to be pretty happy with my team through selling Pedro instead, I personally would be much happier with that.
Because you can't sell both this week, really. You just can't, because I don't think it works out structurally unless you can keep, say, 3 up front, because I think one of those transfers, as you say, needs to be to a bench player.
Yeah, I suppose some people would do a dud Mateta and then spread the money if they had 4 or 5, but that's a pretty specific kind of situation. But I mean, actually talking about kind of striker, I've said downgrade here, but I mean like that is depends on how you read that word, because obviously there are some pretty decent options there, and I have another problem with do as I say, not as I do type thing here, because the one that I'm going to have this week is not necessarily the one I would recommend, which will sound ridiculous when I try and explain it. But the best striker downgrade then. So Thiago is mentioned as an option, obviously doing really well. Was he 3rd for big chances? Like I said, very much a parallel, in a sense, a cheaper parallel to Mateta we discussed on last week's pod in some ways. Spearhead, surprisingly dangerous in difficult fixtures because he is the counter. So I think that's really an important aspect. So we'll come to him. Mateta popular because obviously the XGI is off the charts. Underperforming, admittedly. Penalties, yes. We think rested tonight, Danny. Is that confirmed?
I wouldn't say confirmed, but Ivan said he's rested, so he's rested. Cool. I don't know. I assume rested sounds like he's not even in the squad to me. Ivan said.
If chat do have something on that, do drop it in. And of course, the other option, which is going to be pretty popular, is to dump it right down to 4.5, 4.2, something along those lines. We've done a full U-turn. People are going to hate us for our U-turn on Voltamada because obviously he's a terrific option this week. You know what, with West Ham being an absolute.
I don't think we've U-turned on him. We'll have to.
No. I'm saying that I think people might think that. We don't think that, by the way.
We clarified that last week. I'll talk about that. Mateta's on the bench, by the way. So
yeah, that sounds more realistic. Yeah. And then of course others are thinking about their sales in this area. So João Pedro or Bowen, which I can see why that would be a pretty tricky call as well. I did sort of recommend dumping Bowen this week. So we'll come to that in a minute. I don't know. So you're talking about someone for a couple of weeks' time. I mean, do you want to start with Thiago?
Yeah, I think we have to start with Thiago because I just can't see. I just can't. I'm trying to think of a way to say anything other than he's just the best striker to get for me, in my opinion. Unless you want to get Mateta, which is fine. I can't really see how anyone's close to those two. I mean, I suppose that's in line with the kind of Voltamada question, and I think Voltamada's fine. It's just that, like we said, as much as he looks brilliant, kind of in terms of what he's doing and his focus and his confidence and the type of player and personality is, I mean, he's sensational, and that's what we said. It looks like he does a lot of work for the team, doesn't it? And isn't necessarily the guy who's, he seems to be the facilitator. a little bit. So it's difficult for anyone to want to bring him in because you don't really feel like there's much of a ceiling there potentially, but that may be wrong. He's certainly a very solid and very good pick. And actually, I think Newcastle's fixtures, like I said, from when I looked last week, if you look at the fixture ticker till game week 22 or whenever we looked last week, they were top.
Yeah.
So he's one of those really sort of nice and solid ones to own and hold, and like he could just do the business for you, decent sort of bonus wise, And again, I think that's absolutely fine. You might have one or two other Palace players instead. I just think with Thiago, like we said, we've said it about Brentford so many times. They're everything we hoped they would be at the moment. We're everything that they thought they might be. They're just kind of a package of efficiency. Everything is as they want it to be. It seems so kind of, there's so much kind of team cohesion at the moment there at Brentford. It all just feels very clear, doesn't it? Very repeatable. I feel like if Brentford were a stock, I'd be buying that shares in that stock because you feel like you'd be buying them cheap and you feel like you know what you're going to get and you feel like it's going to be good a lot of the time and you feel like it's going to overperform. And that basically describes Thiago as well in terms of how I see him as a player and feel about him, because it's a bit like we saw Brentford under Thomas Frank, isn't it? In that we knew we'd get these big chances, we knew it'd be Bumo involved and that kind of thing. With Thiago, you obviously want to say something about that, so you can come in there. But he looks confident. The whole team look confident. You've got obviously Henderson, Damsgaard. Henderson looks great. They're so energetic. Yeah. Damsgaard, they all look on it. So it looks like one of these times where they're all on it. They're all fit. You hope it stays that way. They're all absolutely on it. Sharda's a class player. So there is a bit more of a spread as well, by the way, in a sense. But Sharda's just looks class, and you can see why everyone's so interested in him, because every time he's one-on-one. There we go. That's good timing.
It's good timing.
Yeah, he's a weird one, Sharda, because I still don't really know what to think of him in terms of an FPL asset, because I don't really know. I've not studied him that much or thought about him that much because he's not been around all that much, I suppose, and this season anyway.
He did take a penalty, didn't he, at one stage as well?
Did he?
I don't remember the circumstances of that. We think that Thiago's fairly clearly on them, but
Thiago was the last one, didn't he, as well? But Sharda's he looks so assured. He's a big guy. He's so assured. Every time he's one-on-one, you think there's not many players you think are going to score every time they're one-on-one, and he's one of them now. He's done it quite a few times. So he's this last man. He's got this great first touch and confidence, and he's a physical unit and a physical presence, and so he's brilliant. The problem is you need to know a bit more about him and about what he represents and what the team are going to do, because he doesn't have the other things, lots of other little boxes that some players has. He doesn't have the penalties. I don't know about set pieces, but I don't recall. And it's no DEFCON, all that sort of stuff. So it's a difficult one. Whereas Thiago is cheap, presumably cheaper. I think he is. Can't remember now. But he's pretty cheap. And you've got to have. This is the nice thing. You've got to have 3 strikers. So it looks to be an awful lot of value there if he keeps getting these minutes, which he seems to be. He looks confident. He's a big unit. That they're a team where a lot of set pieces fall to them. That long throw, by the way, that might be the best long throw in the league. I can't remember the name of the guy. Can't remember who did it, but that's the best long throw I've seen. So is it Coyote? That's the best long throw I've seen in the league, which is a real weapon. They scored from it. They're going to keep scoring from it. It's like a ballistic missile. It's just like pins. It's proper shape and movement. It's not one of these lofters where it's just hoping to land in an area. It's got like real velocity. Anyway, what you're getting with Thiago just ticks all the boxes. Cheap in a team that's really on it, where you feel like you know what you're going to get, where they know their system and what they're going to do, where he's a big unit, he's winning the ball, he's finishes chances, he takes penalties. Love it, and he's always there for those sort of set pieces. So I can't wait to own Thiago.
Yeah, fair enough. I think Thiago, by the way, is a good example of, we talked about kind of sliding doors moments and that sort of thing, and I wasn't that likely necessarily to go to Saka in the long run. But of course, the last week's situation, not thinking I would have any players on the bench, had to do a bit of a jiggery, well, not jiggery pokery, change things up, and he ended up coming in, and it's had a bit of a knock-on effect to other moves, right? And one of them is I feel if I had 2 or 3 moves this week, pivoting to Thiago would be what I would do, whereas because I've got one and the situation being as it is, I think someone's mentioned the fixtures in the immediate term might be a little bit on the side of Palace, etc. There is kind of that factor as well. But I do really like him, and I would not be surprised at all in 2 weeks if I engineer something there. The comment that I would have though is I've seen a lot of people say, "Oh, you can rotate him." I'm not so sure about that. I don't think. I think on the whole, I would advise against rotating Thiago. It does feel like someone that, unless you've got everything else very much in place, really like 4 quality defenders that week, 5 really good midfielders already, etc. I think Thiago is someone that if you have, you can just leave him in. Because the fixtures that he's returned in are surprising, aren't they? Not hugely surprising, but returns against Liverpool. I think he got a brace against Man United. I know that some of you will be like, "Oh, they're not that hard games," blah blah blah. But I do think, especially in home games against difficult teams, he's a real threat. So I would be playing him pretty much permanently. I think Arsenal away is an exception.
Exactly,
it always is. But other than that.
Exactly. When I'm looking at it, it's only Arsenal away, and even then, I'm thinking. Obviously, I'm looking at who could I play that week? How could it work? But even then, I'm thinking, am I that bothered? Not really. When you've got someone who's talismanic like that and on penalties. But again, that's because of those things we said. Like they feel so repeatable. Brentford. It's the type of chances that they get. They're specialists. They're specialists at certain types of things, and that's what you love. You want specialists, and no one. Again, we always have to caveat maybe Arsenal, but even them, no one can defend, for example, that long throw. Nobody can defend, really well. This is, again, don't forget the set pieces, and this is the guy who was top of the league for set piece coach last season for, set pieces sort of scored and conceded. As in Brentford manager. So they are set piece specialists, they're long throw specialists, and they are sort of probably still kind of big chance specialists. And, passes from like that we saw from Damsgaard and stuff, and the class of someone like Sharda. There's a lot of things to have to defend against Brentford to stop them actually scoring some goals. So that's why it feels so repeatable, and that's why it's like, just as you say, I would not be thinking about benching him, to be honest.
No, not at all. No. I mean, if and when I get him, he's playing pretty much every week. Like I said, Arsenal away is the only fixture in my head that I can immediately think of. I think the other thing, by the way, is that, let's be honest, we are entering, maybe not now, but in a few weeks' time, we're going to start to be thinking about players that we think, oh, they're robust. They're going to play every week, close to 90. I don't need to worry about them from time to time. They're a spot that I can just leave and ignore. It does feel like a spot that you can ignore. Strangely enough, more even than Mateta. I mean, spoiler alert, he's going to be in my team. But but strangely enough, I do think the robust kind of long-term player that you can leave in there, he feels like a really good one, actually. So from that point of view, over Christmas, I wouldn't be worried about him at all. So that's quite an interesting one as well. Again, only 1 game a week, all that kind of stuff as well. A couple of people have mentioned this, Danny, so I'm going to just throw it in there because I'm not saying they say this, but some people would believe he's not even the best striker in that bracket because of Welbeck's fixtures. Did you want to? I know he's someone who's close to your heart, but not necessarily your team. Did you want to have a word on him?
Well, I've not really got anything to say. It's a bit unfair on Danny Welbeck because I've never really considered him because I don't really see him as a kind of robust enough in terms of injuries and that kind of thing. Otherwise, he's clearly great. I mean, what an amazing player, and what he's taking free kicks and scoring them. That's not the first free kick he scored in the last year, I don't think, from memory. He's scored a few of those. penalties. Just a great all-round player, isn't he? He's just class. He's one of those guys who's just at that stage of his career where he doesn't give a shit. So he buries chances. Big, strong, fast, everything. Experienced, decision maker, great footballer. Never forget that man of the match performance away at Real Madrid for Man United all those years ago. But yeah, I just worry too much about his kind of robustness. So when you talk about that structure, again, for me at the moment, like every transfer that I'm thinking about or making, because of the kind of not uncertainty. There's a level of uncertainty at the moment. I don't think, because look at all these questions. Nobody really knows the picks to be on, or who they feel really confident or comfortable about. And so there's quite a lot up in the air. And so therefore, when I make a transfer, that transfer, I intend it to be someone that I'm very sure about and very comfortable about, and therefore won't have to go back there, because there's so many other transfers that we're going to need to make. I think it doesn't matter that we've got loads of transfers either. There's so many. And so Welbeck's not my kind of player. Rightly or wrongly, that might be a mistake, but he just feels like a player that you bring in. He's not going to be there season long, is he? I always want to bring someone in who might just be there for me season long. Pretty much. I can't really think of any exceptions to that, by the way. I've not really thought about it before, but that's the way I play. I can't. Yeah, you know what I mean. So I want to see them there as potentially season long, at least. I mean, that might be a bit exaggerating a bit, but you know what I mean. I don't bring anyone in with an intention of selling or thinking that they're going to be a problem.
I'm going to call bullshit here.
Go on.
No, but some people quite understandably, and by the way, I'm not against this because I would do it as well. But there are a few exceptions to that rule. AFCON, basically. So anyone bringing in Sarr this week or next week,
yeah, true.
Who Buemo, those are the only exceptions. So, but I think your principle is correct, right? So, like I said, a few people last week, because we're in a community team, Son of a Gun, SKLW. We've won 4 games in a row, by the way, if anyone cares. In the Premier League, we're up to 3rd.
They don't.
They don't. No, they don't. Fair enough. But anyway, but the kind of some of the moves I was doing last week, to turn your Raya into Pope and Romero into who's it, Timber. Those kind of moves, I can see why people would think not particularly the most resourceful way of spending transfers, but a bit like you, I kept looking at it and thinking these are the people who I want in there for ages. Like ages. I don't really want to do anything to those spots if I can avoid it. This is the goalkeeper I really like. These are the defenders I really like. Okay, we're always going to miss someone, right? I haven't got Munoz, for example, but I think thinking long term, I don't know, just suits the way that we play anyway. And I like that at different times.
Ooh. Frozen on me there, Rich. I don't know if we're all right here. Can the chat tell me if we're still here? Are we still here? Uh-oh. Oh, we can hear Danny. Oh, they can only hear me. So Rich isn't there. Let's see if we can recover. Okay. Oh, he's texted me saying it's gone off. I'll just see if he can rejoin. And then we'll come back to some questions. Okay. I've got the chat on, so tell me if I'm still here, because I've got a blank screen now. Are we still here, chat? Am I still here? Yes. Okay, thanks. That's surprising, because literally all I can see is just a black screen and nothing else. What was Rich talking about? Yeah, okay. Yeah, we were talking about just long-term picks, and I think I was going to say, to be honest, yeah, I think that there are times when you can have luxury transfers that you can sort of play around with a bit more, and you can, you've got a chance to sort of move on players you feel good about. Oh, what we're saying here? Yep,
I'm back.
screen. Oh, he's back.
Sorry about that, by the way.
It's all right. It's no good. We're still going. No, it's fine. Listen, that's our first issue that we've ever had, by the way. So it has happened at some point. Like loads of other people's pods crash out halfway through.
Just restarted randomly.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so no, I was just starting to say to the chat that because we were just carrying on your point. Well, I can't remember where we were, but about Thiago. But I was just going to say, at the moment, again, it's repeating what I was saying before. I feel like there's less room and opportunity for kind of, I don't know, luxury transfers and moves, as you say, at the moment, because there aren't many. I feel like there aren't many places within that 15. That's how I feel about the 15 at the moment. You're kind of not putting fires out, but I want to put pieces in, like you say, that are going to stay there for a long time, so that we can potentially focus these transfers elsewhere in midfield and stuff, because there are so many potential picks at the moment, and I don't know who I feel really confident about. But yeah, sorry, go on. Can you remember where you were? You've got a beer at least. That's good.
Yeah, I have. Yeah. Not a very good one. Too much head. But yeah, no. I have lost my train of thought, as you can probably imagine. Are we still talking about the strikers?
Yeah, we were talking about Thiago, and I think we were, and
yeah.
Thanks to the chat, by the way, legends, for letting us know that. I did not think. I thought it was probably my computer. So yeah, let's just move from Thiago so that we can sort of reboot and think about Mateta, and is he enough to cover Palace?
Yeah, do you know? I mean, I actually kind of joked with our good friend Easy this week, and I said if you look at last week's pod, because he asked that question, a version thereof at the bottom, which is Mateta enough to cover Palace attackers or double up with Sarr? And I kind of joked that we recommend 0, 1, 2, or 3 Palace players this week. And I wasn't kidding, because it is that kind of scenario where, okay, you've talked about Thiago very convincingly, and I would be happy to own Thiago instead of Mateta. It kind of worked for me, and I'll go through why later on. And I like both players. I don't think I've owned either. They've both got a lot of attributes. They get good volume of big chances, both on penalties, both for good teams. Very happy to kind of own for as long as it looks sensible, and no issue with that at all. But equally, in every position, like, am I going to switch Timber to Munoz? No. Am I going to switch Njai to Sarr? No. Although, like, there is a world with 5 free transfers, blah blah blah. But I don't think I'm not at that position. Would I switch Voltemada or Thiago or whoever it is for Mateta? No. So it is one of those tricky situations where I like all of these players, but it really does depend on your situation. I can see a lot of people dumping a striker down to 4.2 or something like that, and then adding in Munoz and going for that structure this week. And that's the other one I would be pretty tempted with. But I'm somewhere between you can't go wrong with any, but equally you don't necessarily need any either, because we have seen signs of the sort of not, the tiredness, the fatigue kicking in here and there. It's good that they are rotating a few players tonight. I don't know if Sarr is playing.
No, he's starting. He's starting, unfortunately.
Yeah. So that's another kind of factor. But is it enough to cover? Not exactly, because I think Palace are one of those peculiar teams where, let's be honest, 80-90% of goals, maybe 90% is reasonable, actually. They're going to involve at least one of the 3 players that I've just mentioned. They just are. They are that kind of team. They can't replace Munoz, especially. I think Mateta is slightly the weakest option from that point of view, just because of the Nketiah and so on. But even he's coming on largely for Pinot, or is Pinot? I can't remember. Yeah. Pinot Noir. He's the one there. So I think double up's fine, but equally, it really does depend on who you've got and whether you're unhappy with them, because you don't need these guys either. I mean, Danny, you've got. Well, no, actually, I'll let you go on, because I know that you have a Palace defender already, who came back into DEFCON form at the weekend. So maybe you're happy with that now.
No, I'm not, because he was on my bench. And by the way, I was a Goodmanson owner last week. We didn't talk about scores, by the way. I got a shocking week. But yeah, Goodmanson owner, so it was an absolute sickener for me. I went from like 500k to like 800k or something daft.
Is he still injured?
Goodmanson?
Yeah.
I don't know. We're waiting for news.
Yeah, waiting for news.
Yeah, I mean, It's so hard with Palace. It's so weird because we've been talking about them for about 3 weeks or 4 weeks, all season, obviously. But we've been talking about quite a lot for about 4 weeks, and we still haven't. We're still not at the point where the information. We're not at the information point because all the fixtures are yet to happen. We've had an international break where they all had a rest, whatever it was, and then they had. I can't remember what they had, but they had a week or something like that. They lost the European game, which is pretty significant, and obviously then they played Bournemouth and they weren't entirely fresh again. I mean, they did manage to come back to a 3-3. With Mateta, for example, individually, it's difficult to say whether the Nketiah thing. I mean, tonight is quite a good thing for him because they trust Nketiah enough to play him against Liverpool with a pretty strong team. You know, Nketiah's minutes seem to be building up, so it's great if it works out the way that it is at the moment, where Mateta's getting a bit of a rest midweek, and then Nketiah's coming on for Pino or whatever. I mean, that's perfect. So maybe it's even better for Mateta's minutes. I don't know, because previously I've kind of seen Mateta as someone who needs more of a rest, and I do think that is that's the thing. Whether that's always the way, I don't know. But big unit of a guy, and he does seem to struggle a little bit in terms of natural fitness, and that's just purely speculative. Maybe he isn't, but we've seen it a lot with him. He's such a streaky player.
And he's been called up. He's been called up at the moment, isn't he, for France? I think a lot of the time, which is a little bit annoying as well.
Yeah. That takes a lot as well for the French players to get called up from the Premier League.
I'll be honest, just one quick thing on this as well. There is an element of me, and perhaps other owners. Okay, but in this pre-AFCON, one of the reasons why I was quite happy to go with Mateta, for example, we'll talk my team later on, is because we're in this little bit of a window before AFCON and the 5 transfers that you're handed in game week 16. I might be easy to say this now because the rest of the squad is pretty settled, and of course something could go horribly wrong this week. Saka could get injured or whatever it is. But there's an element of me, I don't really care if it busts in 2 weeks' time. I drop down to Thiago. I'm quite happy with that, right? So it's not a huge. I mean, easy to say now. I'm sure there'll be another fire. But there is an element of that. But I think your concerns with Mateta are perfectly reasonable. Equally, and I think we both know this, one of the dangers with him, and actually, if you look at his points this season, I know everyone will have done that already probably, but he is one of those players who, a bit like I'm not going to have Mbeumo, I am worried about not having Mbeumo. And I suspect you're worried about Mateta as well. They are players who could go off, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, this is what I was kind of getting to as well. I mean, we're all worried about someone.
Yeah.
I mean, with Palace, it's not so much that I kind of worry about covering Palace attackers. It's more that I worry that it's going to go I see it as kind of going one way or the other, and it's it's a lot of luck. You know, for example, if you look at, say, Sarr versus Mateta, and that's because, again, I don't really just making pure prediction. Because of their amount of fixtures, they got Liverpool tonight, Brentford, then they've got Europe next Thursday, and as I say, they've lost in Europe, so presumably they've got a bit more pressure to actually win those European games. Then they've got Brighton, then they've got the international break, then it's Europe, then it's Palace, then it's Europe, then it's United, and a lot of games. And so, again, because of their very small squad, I'm not seeing these Palace games and going, because they are a great team. I'm not looking at them going, there's 2-0 there, 3-0, 4-0. That's just, I might be wrong, but I'm seeing it's going to be quite difficult, and I think they probably will win a lot of those games because they're very good and they're very good defensively, and they know how to grind out. But I fear that it's kind of, we could have a week where Sarr scores 4 weeks in a row and Mateta blanks. We could have a week where Mateta just completely Mateta could just completely go off for the next 3 weeks, and Sarr and everyone else blanks. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about which. It is a nightmare. You know what I mean? I don't know which piece. I'm going to get a piece. I'm
gonna also ruin everyone's evening here, but Brentford look really good at the moment. Yeah, they've just turned over Liverpool. They are high on confidence, right? They haven't had a midweek. No, they have actually, haven't they? They have had a midweek game, but they have. They've got a little bit more time before the game and rested a few players and that sort of thing. They beat West Ham away, so they've broken their kind of away duck, so to speak. I wouldn't be remotely surprised if Brentford go there and get a result. I know it's a difficult game and Palace are really good, but I'm not looking at that as the bang. Some people, I think, a few weeks ago would have said, Brentford at home is one of the best games that you can have. I'm not so sure about that now. No, I don't look at that as a walkover at all,
No, it's a good point because I've just said the same thing. I've forgotten they were playing Brentford, to be honest. And someone like me who's got a Palace defender, you have to play them because it's a good fixture, and I've got no choice, to be honest. Got no choice anyway. Hopefully, get some def gone. But I just said I don't think anyone can confidently defend Brentford attack, confidently defend Brentford's long throws, set pieces. Never mind the other stuff. Never mind the class players. So yeah, it's a really tough fixture. I mean, one thing I will say, just thinking about Mateta and Sarr and sort of stuff at the moment. I mean, as you've just said, we're all being a bit dictated by our structure in terms of which way we go. You're getting Mateta because you have to. I'm getting Sarr because of the structure means I pretty much have to.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's so difficult because I find Mateta so difficult to read because he's such a streaky player. When he's really on it, he is just unstoppable. So he could be, we could be seeing that at the moment. He could be this, could be that. I always do just think as a small point, and again, it's really obvious, and everyone's already said this loads of times probably, but Arteta has to do an awful lot in that team, as you do as a number 9 with a sort of team that's playing the back 5. He has to do a lot, and he does a lot. Such a big guy, and he has to occupy so many defenders and constantly winning duels, and and he's knocking it out wide to the players out wide like Munoz and stuff, and then getting into the box and so on and so on. Whereas Sarr's only job really, unless I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud now. First time, correct me if I'm wrong, but really his only job is to score goals. Which I've always quite like. I mean, I know he obviously does other stuff, but he's very much the kind of runner-off Mateta, isn't he? And he's the kind of doesn't even do as much wing work these days. I hope that I'm right about Sarr in terms because it's what we said at the start of the season. It looked to me like he was turning more into the main man. I really like the fact that he looked like he was like, right, Eze's left now. It's up to me. I'm the man. He might have even not. Again, I say that as someone who probably has to think about that consciously. I would think consciously about and assess that and think, can I do it? Right, I've got to do it and work myself. And it would take me ages to work towards that psychologically and be like, and build up confidence. But actually, maybe he's just like a guy like, I am the fucking main man. What do you mean? Eze, I was always the main man. Eze's gone now, but maybe he's just like extremely confident. Who knows? You know what I mean? So I don't know. But what I know is that what I saw at the start of the season and in the last for a long time now is he looks like he knows he's sort of not the main man because Mateta's also the main man. But you know what I mean? He looks like he knows he's the goal scorer. He knows he doesn't give a shit. So could go either way. I'm a bit scared, but we're all a bit scared, I think. I'm more scared because everyone's getting Mateta. The whole of Twitter is getting Mateta. It feels a bit more scary that I'm one of the ones who doesn't own him. But
I mean, I was surprised that as many people copied me as well. No, but just to come back, one last point on this is that I do think there's an element of what you're talking about in all 3 good Palace picks, but particularly the 2 attackers here in Mateta and Sarr, is that they both are seeming a bit more cocksure this season generally. I mean, Mateta definitely has got even more swagger. He's no one's going to be taking those penalties off him now, that's for sure. Like he's not that guy anymore. He's good luck. You'd have to fight him for it, type thing. So
and as
I'd be happy with any of these guys. I wouldn't put anyone. I don't know. It's one of those ridiculous scenarios where if I was on a wild card this week, would I get all 3? I think there's a good argument for it, but I'm pretty sure I would settle on 2 actually. And weirdly enough, I wouldn't necessarily get the one I'm getting. Which, again, I'm full of contradictions this week, so perhaps don't listen to anything I say. But yeah, I think they're all good. But I do want to just touch on one other thing in that third question before we move on to the more sort of long structural queries that we've had sent in. And people are also talking about restructures, and they're also talking about the players that they are considering selling, and whether sales for João Pedro, given that he's got 2 really good fixtures coming up after this week, and this week is fine, it's Spurs away, but we got Wolves and Burnley soon coming up there. Bowen himself has got Burnley at home coming up shortly as well, and is often mentioned as a bit more talismanic. I don't know. What do you think about those, Danny? Because those are some of the players that people were wondering whether they can get away with holding or selling. And there's been a lot of questions this week about, if you had both, which one would you blah, blah, blah. as I say, I'm pretty keen on. Was pretty keen to get rid of João Pedro, but your thoughts on that one, and also the restructure point, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of those two, and that's quite an interesting kind of comparison, because I mean, normally we've given João Pedro a lot of time now, and fundamentally, you know, the manager's mentioned that he's not fully fit, hasn't he? Or was it an injury or something that's kind of niggling away? I can't remember now, but he's not 100%. He said he's physically not 100%. Now that's really quite significant because that's what we're seeing on the pitch. We've seen him in the number 10 now and still do nothing. So that's a lot of information to just be like, right, you know, he's done nothing for ages, but also apparently he's not fully fit. So whereas contrast that with Bowen, West Ham have been crap. They've got Newcastle next. I can't remember what the full fixture list looks like. I'll get that up really quickly.
Newcastle, then Burnley, and then a series of very difficult games. I mean, it's a lot of difficult ones. City,
Okay.
Man United, Brighton, etc.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not someone you'd want to buy, and you know, obviously. But the thing with Bowen is he individually looks sharp. I mean, you look at that shot that was saved on Friday, for example. That was it sort of bicycle kick volley type shot that was just like really whipped. It was just indicative of someone who, okay, I know West Ham are crap. I do expect them to get a bit better. They looked a little bit better towards the end of that game, and I do have some faith in the manager to get something out of them. But it's just that's quite a lot of evidence in that one of them individually is not fit. So I kind of give that precedent over the fixtures just a little bit. You know, obviously not too extreme, but one of them looks terrible and isn't fit. And one of them looks really sharp individually, and he's quite a talisman. So if you sell him one, I think it still would be João Pedro.
Yeah,
it's just not working for him at the moment sometimes, and it is tough. You're selling the guy who's done nothing for you for weeks, but you can't just keep holding on to these guys forever. He's not doing it. Bottom line. So yeah, I wouldn't want either, but I'd feel okay about having to roll out Bowen, to be honest, at the moment. I'd feel okay about that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. I certainly don't think you'd be necessarily holding for fixtures. So just bear that in mind. Even though Newcastle at home, it's not good. It's not the worst, but it's not good. But Burnley away, I don't think is as good a game as it looked like it was going to be a few weeks ago. But yeah, just because of faith in the player and the amount of involvement that he would have if there is a goal. I'm going to say one quick thing as well about the 4-5 and restructure strikers as well, because I think we do have to move on. But I mean, just to make it easy, I mean, both of us are doing that route of dumping a striker right down to basement level. So I think that probably tells you everything you need to know. The points potential is just greater elsewhere on the pitch at the moment, I think, from our point of view. I'm just going to give one bit of team news before we go on to these kind of long structuring questions, because I don't think anyone's mentioned it in the chat yet, or we haven't mentioned it unless you did, Danny, while I was out of the room or out the screen. I don't know, whatever that's going to look like. But Arsenal complete rotation tonight. So the only player, if you've got him in your team, that you need to worry about is Eze. He's the only one of the recognisable people starting. So if you've got any of the defenders, they're all rested. If you've got Gyökeres, he's rested. If you've got Saka, they're all rested. There's a few of them on the bench, but basically it's sort of Mascara, White, Kepa. It's that kind of level of player who's playing as well. So that's interesting news as well.
Yeah. Even David Raya's got a rest. So yeah.
Even David Raya, he was he's been given a night off. He's just gonna kick back with bit of Netflix, and he'll be down this evening. Long-term stuff, if I can. A couple of more questions, and then we'll go on to this week's games. I thought this was quite an interesting point. So it was sent in about 121 double-digit hauls in the first 9 game weeks, and only 16 have been for strikers. So that's quite an interesting point in itself. Why do so many continue to play 3 up front? I'm just going to bring the slide which will just explain this in a bit more depth. So that for those of you who are interested, this was sent into... Now, I did have the details of people that sent this stuff in, but because of the crash earlier on,
you
have
Ash.
to forgive me. Ash,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Ash,
Ash was the original question that we received on this. On the screen, you can see a kind of a table which identifies double-digit hauls per team. And as you can see, a lot of them coming from Arsenal. And then you can see the players on the right-hand side. So Haaland is obviously the exception to the rule when it comes to strikers. He's got 4 double digits, but not many elsewhere. Welbeck, interestingly, is one of the best performers in this area as well. So not many others, but most coming from defence and midfield, of course, as well. I don't know. Is this maybe not directly, Danny, but is this kind of one of the reasons why you're reticent to stick with 3 up front, because that points potential is greater elsewhere, and you're just seeing greater opportunities for hauls, that sort of thing elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of there's nothing really new there. I've always favoured the midfielders. I mean, I say that. I mean, I probably played 3-4-3. We've probably all played 3-4-3 more than any other formation over the years, which is understandable because usually a cheap striker, I mean, price structures change the game a bit. We don't often need a cheap striker now. We used to need that for a long time, didn't we? And cheap strikers, especially game week 1, game week 1 shapes a lot of things as well throughout the season. And game week 1 is often the time when, or historically, the cheap striker offers an awful lot of value on paper. You often get a striker who's 5.5, 6, 6.5, who is 90 minutes and on penalties, even if it's promoted team or for someone or other. And that offers a lot of value game week 1 when we don't know who's good. We don't know which players are good. We don't know what teams are good. And so it's very logical to go with a cheap striker who's on penalties and on 90 minutes because what you do know is they're in the right area of the pitch. And I think game week 1 shapes shapes the season for a lot of people. And I think this season is no different. I mean, when we think about the structure, yes, we've got 3 strikers, but in a sense, we've all only got 2 strikers, really, kind of thing, because of Haaland. So everyone's got Haaland. I mean, and everybody should have Haaland, basically, just to simplify things. So that's one striker position gone. That's one position gone. And I think just the kind of, a lot of the players that have been available and have kind of lent themselves to us going with that kind of mid-price striker structure or a couple of decent strikers. I mean, we've not had Saka until recently. A lot of people don't have Saka because it's difficult to get there. He's only really just sort of come back in the last 3 weeks or whatever it's been and kind of looking good and looking fit. We don't have Palmer. It's obviously been a kind of Salah or Haaland thing. A lot of people don't like Bruno. So there hasn't really been those midfielders. So people have got money to spend. There has also been good, cheap midfielders. So people have been rotating a lot. You've had people like Reinders and who else? Good shout, Colin. People like Reinders and so on. And so then you've had João Pedro, who's obviously looked essential at the start of the season. And maybe that's because he was fully fit, partly. So, a lot of it's just kind of lent itself to that structure. And some people are there and kind of staying there. And again, you're an example where because you've not got you might change that structure, but because you've not got the transfers, you'll probably stay on it for a bit or a couple more weeks or whatever. I don't know what it looks like for your team, but Mateta suddenly emerged as a possible replacement for these guys. So all that stuff's really obvious, but I thought, what I'm saying? I don't think it's kind of changed an awful lot, but these are interesting numbers because there's definitely a shift. There's certainly a shift towards defenders, aren't there? So for me, midfield is actually quite nice, this table, because it actually shows me, it reinforces the belief of midfielders are still the dons. Midfielders really are still the dons. They're the kings.
Yep.
The kind of anomaly, the shift this season is Arsenal. Gabriel, Timber. That's the real shift. They're the real sort of standouts with big ceilings. And obviously there are lots of other good defenders, and Defcon takes it up, but I still think we can kind of rotate those positions. Whereas with midfielders, there's loads of big hitting midfielders now, isn't there? Saka, potentially Bruno, Bumo, Semenyo, potentially Sarr, and then all the other guys we've talked about, and Jai, and some really, really good and big hitting midfielders.
Yeah, so, I think that's right. there are a few. I'm going to say a few things to sort of not pour water on some of the findings here, but there are some caveats that I think we all need to be kind of grown up and realize that there are things that are likely to at some point change. So, for example, take this table here. I think you're right to note that the midfield is still a standout area for double-digit hauls, and I think that is likely to get a bit stronger, I would suggest, because we're assuming that at some point in the season we're going to have Salah with his nice fixtures coming up. We're going to have Palmer back at some point, for hopefully firing. We're going to have Saka, who we've missed for a fair amount of time. That's likely to strengthen midfield. And with the defensive numbers, if we take one team out of the equation just immediately, I'm not going to say that Sunderland are going to suddenly become rubbish. They've done incredibly well. But to have the only team for 2 double-digit hauls for goalkeeper and 6 double-digit hauls for defenders, equal top to Arsenal, I think it would be a hugely optimistic Sunderland fan. Mackham, I'm going to say Mackham. Is that right? I don't want to offend anyone. Maybe I'm right about that. That it would take huge optimism to believe that was going to continue in the kind of vein that it will do. So, just I think that's worth bearing in mind. They have had excellent fixtures, and that obviously isn't the case going forward. So I do think that makes a little bit of a difference there. Some people in the chat are mentioning about things like the impact of penalties, not as much of a bonus, that sort of thing. I think that factor is important, especially with strikers. Yeah. So it's maybe one of the only minor things against one or two of these strikers that we've talked about, actually, with Thiago, etc. Maybe it's not as prominent as it could have been. But I think that's a really good point. And I think the other thing, by the way, is context is important. You talked about game week 1, and we also talked about wildcard 6 was a very popular week. And at that time, we couldn't get Saka, I don't think. Well, no, we could, but it would have been a risk. So Gyökeres was more important. Pedro had excellent fixtures. Palmer wasn't available. If Palmer was available and Saka was easily available and not coming back from injury, people would not have 3 strikers on a wildcard 6, for example. So that all of those things do make a difference. And as Danny said, Haaland wasn't really up for debate. So I do think all of those things are factors, and that's why there's a retreat now away from strikers. So yeah, we'd all like to do it quicker, I think, but it's just a case of transfers, isn't it? You're not going to suddenly, if you got Voltemada in your team, for example, you're not going to be like, oh yeah, but strikers are rubbish, I'm going to sell him. You are going to think about when that is opportune. And also, it's not always easy. Like, to take, for example, like in my midfield, my weakest spot, and people like him at the moment, is Minte. And, is he better than a lot of the striker options? No. What's the trade-off? The trade-off is because I've got Saka and an expensive defence. So, all of these things are part of the consideration. But I think it's a good point that double-digit calls are...
No, it's a really good point. It's a really good point. I think, well, it's we know it, and the point about penalties and bonuses is obviously it is significant, and I think it's a really good change, by the way. It just comes down to the individual, though, doesn't it? Still, in terms of the player, but I mean, because we see this big shift in the style of football, and you could argue that forwards, in terms of goal scoring, are less relevant than they've ever been. Because we see this sort of direct shift of, well, I say direct, so that they'd have to do a lot of work of holding the ball up and so on. But all this sort of set piece stuff and long ball stuff is more about other players, and it's more about the big defenders or who the second balls are going to drop to and so on. It's not just about a striker. I think you have to do an awful lot now to be a striker that is kind of not essential, but someone who is a really good pick. You do have to do an awful lot. Because the bar is so high, it is fascinating, isn't it? Because someone like Voltemada, for example, great player, and he's going to get goals and stuff. But yeah, I mean, he's not quite doing enough for me to be in that kind of meta thinking and that kind of structure. I can't really think of anyone again. Like Thiago, it's different because you have to have 3, and he's so cheap. So Mateta is the one that obviously stands out, and I can't really think of any or many others and he has to do enough to be that 7.5 million striker, and you have to do an awful lot, don't you? Yeah, strikers just have to do more to work for their money, work for their value at the moment.
Yeah,
so it's interesting.
that final question, because there are more that people have sent in, and like I said, and thank you very much for those. But we'll do this last one, and if we have time at the end, we might look at one or two more. But this is a big structural question, so we'll just come to it in a minute. It's about chip use, because I think one or two people who view, maybe more, have got wildcards still in hand, which is amazing. So I mean, that's an incredible level of patience that I didn't have. Bench boost, I think we're both through that stage, aren't we, with bench boost, for better or worse. I slacked out with 8 points, sadly. So it's about when to use wildcard and bench boost. And I think I want to throw free hit into that. No one asked about this, but I'm going to talk about it anyway, because I've seen it start to, people sort of remembered almost absent-mindedly, oh, wait, we've got a free hit somewhere, haven't we? We've got to use it at some point. So that is quite important to kind of bring into the conversation as well. Okay, I mean, actually, what I'm going to do with this, Danny, this is a bit kind of unorthodox, perhaps. There's probably a better way of doing that. Now, I'm lazy, so this is a good time to say like and subscribe and share, because you feel sorry for us as much as anything else. I meant to change this slide, I didn't, but actually, it gives me a chance to say to give a nod to our good friend Dan Lego Mane _ FPL there, who won some sort of competition on Twitter this week about being one of the best account for something or other. Forgive me, I can't remember what, but show him some love. Do follow him, because his charts are really handy, and he's a lovely man. He's part of our Son of a Gun squad, as mentioned earlier on. So this chart just helps a little bit with thinking about chip use. There is a better table that I could have used probably, but this is good just for mapping it out a little bit. I think let's start with wildcard, because both of us are in a situation where we've used ours. We know we get the six. That's an extra one. 5 transfers in 16. I'm right about that, I think. So looking at that window, I still think if you are not ready to use it this week, 11 doesn't shout anything out at all to me as a wildcard week. But there are reasons why 12 is a nice one if you are still in this situation. So you've got the start of a Liverpool run where maybe you've got enough information to do something about that. You've got a situation where, I was going to say Bournemouth return to better fixtures if perhaps you want to take a few weeks going against them, because actually there's been a lot of talk about people who are a bit annoyed about Semenyo at the moment and are feeling like they could go against that. And if you want to take a few weeks to go against that, that's perfectly reasonable. So I do think 12 probably looks like the most sensible one for a wild card at this point. But what do you think, Danny? Because it's hard to say at this point, isn't it? Because people's situations are so different. But I'm assuming a team who still holds a wild card has probably got players like Van der Ven, and has the 3 strikers and the rest of it. So anything jump out to you?
Well, just obviously that it could be 13. I think there's a lot of people talking about 13. You could, to an extent, I don't like the idea of dead ending, but there could be some players you could get in. So I mean, 13 obviously. Liverpool's run starts in 12. In terms of 13, I think Newcastle away is a bit of a stinker for Man City, for example, in 12. Because I just don't think City are anywhere near what they were, so City are a bit different now, where it's like when they do have a really tough fixture, you think, oh God, don't feel great about anyone. Whereas you still think they're going to do very well against the lesser sides. And there's obviously Newcastle as well, who've got City that week, as I say, in 12. So in terms of a fixture run to jump on. So 13 probably stands out maybe a little bit more to me as kind of just a little bit more information. And you can it depends what you want to do with the team. It's so difficult at the moment because, with Man City, do they have any other picks apart from Haaland? What do you reckon, Rich? I don't know what you're catching up on there.
No, I'm just scanning for the fixture swings that I haven't got on the screen.
Oh, I see. Right. Yeah. I mean, because it is difficult, isn't it? Because it all feels a bit sort of like, you'd feel a little bit deflated. I mean, if you've still, maybe you wouldn't actually, because anyone who's not wildcarded yet is probably doing really quite well, who's won a wildcard in 13. but it is difficult because it's difficult to get excited when Arsenal or Arsenal. So everybody's got or wants the right three. I suppose it is an opportunity to maybe to switch that around if you've got a different three. City have got such a good run, but do you want any City player apart from Haaland? I'm not sure you want any City player apart from Haaland. You could maybe Donnarumma, maybe a defender, maybe Vardiol. It depends how much room there is for that defender. So there are some bets to make there. I mean, Newcastle again is one where it's, potentially. I mean, Gordon is just such a weird one. Again, he should be a great pick, but what's going on there? Why are his minutes not fantastic? Maybe he is still going to be a great pick. Pope probably is. So, yeah, I don't know. It's obviously 12 or 13, but 13 probably jumps out to me maybe a little bit more if you can get another week's worth of.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think one of those two is probably. I mean, actually, just because a follow-up question was about the use of bench boost as well, and I'll be honest with you, this I think is a bit of a nightmare. I still think you really, if you humanly can and you can get your 15 out, I really would want to do it before wildcard in my head. But then if you've carried it this long and you can get through to a point where you're quite amenable about how you use those 5 free transfers, it's quite an interesting situation because if you wanted to, it's quite reasonable to say this. I haven't thought it through, by the way. I'm thinking on the fly about this particular question. But if you have the ability to kind of move things around and maybe you could consider a very late wildcard, then you can get that bench boost in at that time. The danger is, if you're entering that sort of 16 to 19 kind of window, that's Christmas, isn't it, basically? So whoa. it's a very hard one. Generally, the general rule of thumb, I think, with bench boost is as soon as you got 15 players and you're not unhappy about their chances of all starting, unless the fixtures are raggedly horrible, I would just get rid of it at this point personally. But that's just me.
Yeah, a lot of people. I was thinking now because I've not thought about this at all ever because we've used the chips. But a lot of people are talking about free hit is relevant, and a lot of people talk about 13 for free hit. I find free hit, as I knew I would, I find it terrifying. I don't know how I'm going to deal with it because I can't foresee there being a week. It's there just as a safety net for me, and it's one of them where I could burn it. I won't, but it's one of them where I'm not sure I can see when I would really want to use it. People are talking about 13 because Arsenal playing Chelsea, and I'm like, so that means they're going to get.
No, I know. Yeah, I have to say I looked to this, Danny, and I thought 13 looked like one of the better weeks as well. But it is, you're really clutching at straws, as you said. Arsenal, Chelsea. I mean,
to be honest, looking at 13, because there isn't much to cling on to in terms of a free hit. Do I care that they're playing Chelsea? No, they'll probably, because they expect Arsenal to just up their game, probably win that 2-0 rather than 1-0. Or you know what I mean? It's like that's probably what I would expect to that, and it's the sort of game that Saka can do well in. Although I guess he's coming up against Cucurella, which can be a bit of a pain. But you think about captaincy, that's the big one. I mean, we're not selling Haaland, and it depends who you want to captain in 12, for example, because Newcastle away is a stinker for Man City and for Haaland. And if ever there's a game he could blank in that run, you're talking Newcastle away, Arsenal away are probably the 2 worst fixtures, maybe in the league, and Palace away sort of thing. Probably the 3 worst fixtures for captaincy and for hope. So it could be as simple as that. And look, actually, maybe you should look at 12 and think, okay, you could get Salah into Forest at home, or And the other thing to say, and I know we've got United players potentially, a lot will change here in those 4 weeks, and 5 weeks and 6 weeks. Kind of alongside that, the big thing in terms of looking at potential opportunities for those wildcarders is Cole Palmer. And people don't like to hear that because he's so distant at the moment. We can't see him. We can't feel him. We don't believe that he's necessarily, we're not interested. We don't want him in our decisions. We don't necessarily believe he's going to come back and be great, which he may not. But you have to think about all possible scenarios, and he's going to get the international break off. He did have a bit of a groin problem. He's had a nice long rest now. You would hope, and obviously Chelsea would hope, because it's pretty much one or the other. He's either going to come back and get re-injured, or he's going to come back and he's going to be, he's going to be back to fully fit. Now that's a really interesting one in terms of an opportunity, and when that is, if you look at, it doesn't really matter about the fixtures, but who you can get to and how you structure your team around that. Because if Palmer we could easily be in whatever it is, game week 11, 12-ish, and we could be in a situation where actually we know that Palmer is fully fit, fresh, ready to go, maybe played a game. That's quite a nice opportunity in terms of wildcard and what that structure looks like and fitting players and price points in that people are not going to be able to get to.
I think one of the other things, by the way, that we probably have to factor in if you're thinking about when you're going to use your free hit is that I think you've got to get it out of your head that you're going to be overturning your entire squad, right? You know, often you think in terms of, oh, we're going to change like 9, 10 positions, etc. Don't be surprised if you get to it and you're okay with only switching 4, 5 positions. I think that's because actually I don't necessarily hate that this particular year. Because I think, okay, I'm trying to think of an example here, but okay, well, let's just say Arsenal, Chelsea, for the sake of an argument here. You know, if that bothers you, okay, so those particular spots, what are you going to do? I mean, I don't know. Okay, this isn't a convincing argument, but okay, maybe Villa look better at the moment. You like them against Wolves, something like that, and obviously you can get a few Liverpool in. That might only be 3 or 4 spots. Maybe you have 1 or 2 Villa, 1 or 2 Liverpool, and the rest of it you're quite happy with. It might be that. It might not be as a huge an overhaul as you might necessarily think. The other things that I'm just going to come to very quickly is that don't discount the idea of, I know we all kind of have issues with this kind of Christmas period where we know that there's a significant amount of rotation. Maybe you just hold it as if you think you can keep getting away with it and you hold it right up to kind of 18, 19, 20. Well, no, not. What is the game week it would turn over? It's 19, presumably.
I think so, yeah.
19. But if you do hold it and you end up to a point where, you know, there's no opportunity right through to, it's not the worst thing to have that stashed away in the back pocket. I can see a scenario where I just hang on to it right through as a kind of get out of jail card.
Totally.
Is that optimal? Probably not. But
no, it's true because you get that invisible value from it there, and it sounds silly, but you could be in that situation where you take it to somewhere like at the very end. It's carried you through and been a very important safety net. If you get there, you're just upgrading a few players, like upgrading a few little players here and there, sort of thing, to make your team slightly better that week. Maybe, you know, who knows?
I think there is just a final word on this one. I do think there is an element. Of course, I know this is an obvious thing to say, but it does somewhat depend on who you own, right? So, for example, people are very heavily talking about Palace this week. If you triple up and you get to game week 16, that would be a bit of a weird week to do it because of the AFCON transfers. But nevertheless, if you don't like the idea of the City versus Palace clash, then maybe that's your week because, of course, you might not own Saka, Salah, etc. So it is going to depend a lot. I think the short answer, though, is a few more weeks of information before I personally will even come to anything close to a decision on that. So it is a hard one, but we should be thinking about it. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, I'm glad as well because I haven't really thought about it yet. And I just to kind of reiterate the point, captaincy is the big one. And the more I'm looking at 12, even I'm like, because you know, it's very hard with Arsenal playing Spurs. It's very hard to sort of know what Thomas Frank does in that. It's a big derby. He's a very, very shrewd manager. So there's an opportunity there because it's basically Man United at home to Everton. A lot of people are not going to be comfortable with captain a United player, and I'm not even sure I am really.
Yeah.
But for example, Salah at home to Forest, no matter how bad Liverpool are, I mean, that's the sort of game you would not be surprised at all to see Liverpool do a bit kind of what they did again in Europe, where, you know, that it's not like they're going to be facing an awful lot of threat from Forest, you know, in terms of having to defend. So that could just be a game where they end up tearing them to shreds. So yeah, opportunity there, maybe.
Cool. Yes, we'll definitely be returning to that a few times, I think. But if we can, we'll just have a quick look at this week's games before we go on to our teams. There are a few other things that we might refer to as well as part of our decision. So for your benefit, rather than anyone else's, Danny, I'm going to bring in the midfield sort of numbers that the chart that we looked at with the midfielders a bit later on as well when we come to our teams. So projected goals and clean sheets are just on the screen there for anyone who is listening on audio. I'll just read out some of the highlights. So best clean sheet odds this week, it won't shock you. You can guess it in one, is Arsenal at Burnley, who are Arsenal predicted 52% likelihood of clean sheet, which I think is quite fair. Any others stand out there? Fulham, strangely enough, this is really annoying if we don't have Anderson back, personally, in my team anyway. 40% would have been a nice one to try and get there. Likelihood. And in terms of highest predicted goals, we've got Arsenal at Burnley 2.17. We got Liverpool against Villa 2.07. Man City 2.15. So still likely the favourite for captaincy, City there. And strangely enough, I will bring up one exciting opportunity against that in a minute as well. Then I'm going to start with just one quick question for you before I just allow you to sort of wander through this and choosing what you might. But there has been a lot of people talking. I don't know whether it's kind of, again, Monday confidence, if you know what I mean. But Gabriel captain.
Yeah. I mean, well, what I was about to say was, it's part of the same conversation, is the thing that jumps out to me there, and the thing that I feel least confident about in terms of least in line with the bookies, is the Man City game. You know, I think that, I mean, who knows how it pans out, but I think that's a really difficult game for City. I don't really know how it's going to pan out in terms of goals and stuff. I know Bournemouth can do sometimes allow you to get some chances. I know City are at home, but that's going to be a really difficult game for City. City are not what they were. You know, they're struggling against very good teams, and they're coming up against a Bournemouth team who know that. They're going to be going there thinking, we can have this, boys. Like, they've serious players on that Bournemouth team, serious team, serious manager. It's going to be a really difficult game. Obviously, Haaland is Haaland. He's at home. You'd expect him to get something, but you know what I mean. Like, I'm not seeing that as one-sided as it is there at all. And I'm even like, you know, I'm like you. I could really do with Anderson, because that would be nice. Because, well, very nice actually, especially when he's probably not even owned by the masses all that much. I don't know what his ownership's like, but it's going to be nothing like Van der Ven's. So these are the sort of games when you want him. But if he doesn't play for me, I've got like Senesi playing, and I'm not that bothered.
I know what you mean. I'm even debating Rodon versus Senesi this week, it sounds ridiculous, and I'm almost certainly going to play Rodon.
I've got Goodmanson, and I know good. Well, if Goodmanson's fit, I know Rodon destroyed him on Friday, which was incredibly annoying for various reasons for me. Yeah. But there's not much difference between those two players, and yeah, I'll be playing Senesi because he. I don't know. People say, "Oh, it's not a good DEFCON game for because they're playing against City." I think Senesi, of all people, I mean, he really is a DEFCON beast. I mean, I'd still be pretty surprised if he didn't DEFCON that game, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd also be pretty surprised if he doesn't get another yellow card. He absolutely loves that at the moment. I think he's got a couple in a row now. He's definitely, in our teams anyway, he'll be one of the more because there are quite a few players who are starting to crop up on that kind of suspension tightrope thing, aren't there? It's not acute, but you know, if you're thinking about Munoz, Thiago, etc., a lot of them are on sort of 3 at the moment, aren't they? So anyway, another conversation.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But you know, in terms of Gabriel, it's never been as close. I've never captained a defender in my life. It's never been as close as it is now in terms of him being an option, I would say, and that's you know, more than anything, that's just about the clean sheets. They're so absurd at defence, and it is a different level for them, and they were already absurd anyway. And now it does feel a bit like this sort of change in style benefits them even further, a kind of, in the sense of this sort of direct play and these sort of set pieces. They've been training at that for 2 years non-stop, and when you train for that in training, you know, half your team, half your first team are the defenders, and half your first team are the attackers, or I'm sure they do that sort of thing. You know, so they're defending these set pieces all the time in training, and they're attacking them, and it's like they're in their element. You know, the rest of the Premier League has come to them and what they were doing. And it's the clean sheets more than anything. You'd never felt so absurdly confident about them ever. I can't recall ever being. I mean, I didn't play FPL. Well, I don't even know if it existed then, but in sort of Mourinho, Chelsea days and stuff. So I can't remember what that would feel like, even thinking about that sort of team. But so even if I compare it to, say, a Trent Alexander-Arnold in his prime, I never captained him, and I never would, because it was still just about those kind of where are those avenues coming from? Where do I feel confident? Okay, yeah, he's a brilliant attacker, but do I feel super confident about any one of those aspects? Whether it's an assist, a cross, a goal, less likely, a clean sheet, maybe, because of a good Liverpool team, and it was never enough to even captain Trent Alexander-Arnold, the guy who we say is the best ever. But with Arsenal, the clean sheet aspect is absurd, and that's what you're banking on. But it's still not enough for me, because you still don't feel it's likely enough. The other stuff is likely enough, in terms of the set piece threat and the rest of it, the DEFCON. But again, this is one of those potential weeks in terms of captaincy, maybe, because that is a tough game for City. What do you think about captaincy?
Yeah, I was very tempted to tell a story about when I captained a defender once, but we'll come to that in a second. I'm kind of more or less in alignment with you. I mean, it hasn't shifted. Yeah, I haven't kind of wavered on changing it on the app or the site or anything like that by any means.
No,
but yeah, it does. I mean, the full rest for Arsenal tonight does give me a little bit of pause. I know that was unlikely to be a factor anyway, but having a full team rest is quite a notable point.
Praz, I think I heard Praz saying that he's got Gabriel vice captain, and again, I don't got to that stage of even looking at who my vice captain is.
Saka for me, I think.
But that's a reasonable shout.
Well, I mean, Saka is another one. I really sort of should be in a position where I could be confidently switching to that, but don't know whether I'm quite there yet.
Yeah, I mean, there's a question mark there. An exciting player, so not someone like you, would captain Saka this week.
I don't know what you mean. All right, well, actually, do you know what? That gives me my opportunity. I was just thinking about times I'd captain defender. I know there are some obvious ones. People did that Brighton double or treble. I don't know when that was, 5+ years ago, probably. But I remember in a double game week, captaining Reece James when he had Burnley away, and he bagged an 18-pointer in that first game, and then got injured. So it was one of those weird ones, but at the time that was against the grain. That was quite exciting for me. But he got 18 points away at Burnley. It was terrific. They won 4-0 or something.
Yeah, do you remember? Because wasn't it? Didn't everyone else have, or didn't those who didn't have James captain? Didn't they have? Who was the guy who's gone to Real Madrid? The centre back, the big Chelsea centre back, Rudiger. Do you remember? Wasn't that the week that a lot of people had Rudiger? I think Rudiger blanked in the first week, and I think he got an absurd haul in the second week. I might be misremembering. Anyway, I do remember that. So yeah, no, I'm not quite there yet either. I mean, it's nice that City are at home. So
and obviously Haaland has a rest as well. I think that's it's worth pointing that out.
Saka is a lot of fun there, by the way. Like I'd be pretty close if I owned Saka. I'd be pretty close to considering that.
Yeah,
as captaincy, as a midfielder.
I think obviously. So he was ill, wasn't he, last weekend? No one knew about that particularly. One would tend to assume he's absolutely fine for this fixture in terms of minutes. Yeah, okay. Something to think about, actually, there. I haven't really given it enough thought, but maybe I should. Chat, let us know what you think. Saka as a captain. I don't want to dwell too much because we can go to our teams in a few minutes' time, but just about some other things that are noteworthy here, if I can. I should probably take the opportunity for the West Ham rant, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
It's obviously not especially FPL relevant, although if you do have, I mean, some people have jokingly said about captaining Dan Burn, and it's not completely terrible idea, obviously, because they, the odds look good, and
I didn't I didn't even know, that Paquetá until I watched the highlights before. I switched off on Friday because I was so pissed off when Goodmanson went off injured. I didn't even know that Paquetá had scored a goal that was just offside because obviously I started Paquetá this week.
In off the bar as well, lovely. One of those lovely ones. The way it looks visually is lovely. Yeah. I don't know whether I've actually got that much to add, to be honest with you. But from just a fan moment, if I can. I mean, honestly, it's so hard to know what to think at the moment because we don't know why a lot of this is happening. Why Nuno has decided to play an academy left back who is very much a sort of far second choice and playing him in a position that he's never ever played at any level before at right back. It is absolutely bizarre. They look pretty shocking. As you said, they did have an improved second half at Leeds to a point, but it really is looking worrying. I would. None of us can find any kind of route to confidence at this point in time at all. So the other thing, there are some things that we didn't know, Mavropanos getting injured and that sort of thing. But I think you might be right. The other week when we had this conversation, maybe the players just aren't as good as we thought they were. They just don't look very good. The thing I would say, the only thing that gives me a little bit of cause for hope is that it would have been so obvious to anyone watching that Fernandes, Magassa to a lesser extent, and Potts do just have a bit more energy and drive than playing Souček and the others essentially that are being trolled out. Andy Irving, which was a bit of a joke amongst fans. The guy played one good season for Austria Fragenfurt or something like this. I can't remember what it's called, Klagenfurt. In their top division, etc. It is a remarkable situation at the moment. So I don't know what's going on, but they're going down. Sorry, unfortunately, it's really not a good look as well. That stadium will absolutely be awful in the championship, as you know.
Jesus, yeah,
it's going to be absolutely horrendous. Anyway, I don't really have much of a good rant there. It's just not good. It's just very unpleasant.
No, it's understandable that it's not something you want to talk about too much at the moment. It's very difficult. I mean, there's some hope there, but they've got good forwards, and hopefully it's all about the manager. At the end of the day, it all comes down to the manager. I know the players might not be good enough, but the manager is enough. If he can get it working, that's the significant thing. So,
yeah, it's unfortunately a terrible time to look aside and watch what Sunderland are doing, and Leeds being relative. Leeds are a tricky one as well because, of course, they have done incredibly well and they deserve to be where they are and the rest of it. But let's call another thing. I know FOMO in the chat is going to kill me for saying they're not. They should be quite beatable. They're not. They don't have a huge amount about them individually, etc. They're doing well, obviously, but a good team should be able to move beyond them. And we didn't have anywhere near enough there. So deserve to be in the bottom three, of course. So no complaints there. And congratulations to Leeds and Sunderland fans, etc. No issue with that at all. Even Burnley look better than West Ham, though. Let's move on to our teams before I get dour and all sorts of things. Actually, I don't know. We'll come back to this when you talk about your transfer, I think. Is that all right?
Yeah.
It's me first, is it? Yeah, apologies for... Well, it's not apologies. It's perfectly good. This is my lineup from the FF Scout planner tool. Which is
I don't like that. I don't like that image. Maybe you should not use that tool. I don't know. I don't like it.
Yeah, okay, noted. Laziness on my part. But anyway, I'll read it out anyway for audio. Obviously, some of these flags are not there anymore. Pope in goal, Gabriel, Anderson, and Timber. Anderson, we don't think is going to pull through, but nevertheless, he's there for now. Semenyo, Fernandes, Njai, Saka, and Minte, who suddenly everyone is interested in, and I own him, put it that way. Mateta and Haaland will be in there. Dubravka, Rodon, Senesi, and Gui on the bench. Nothing to say, really. I suppose captaincy is probably the thing to ponder actually over after this conversation tonight. So it's obviously going to be between Haaland, Saka, and I mean, am I realistically going to go with Gabriel? Well, you never know. those are the obvious ones there. I have to say, just a quick word on Njai as well. He's looked absolutely outstanding lately, isn't he? It's such a shame that he hasn't got anyone to pass to. But,
I don't know how he didn't get any points on the weekend. He was absolutely brilliant.
But I have to say, by the way, when I was watching highlights of this weekend, there's so many players that, in a way, occupy similar thought space to me as the way that Bruno is. And there was an element of me watching Njai and thinking, he's sort of performing a role that isn't a million miles away from what Fernandes is doing at Man United. But I don't know whether I've got the articulation to explain it, but there is an element of that.
No,
Minte, by the way, I feel like I could talk about, but let's just say he's the weak link in my team. I'm fine with him at this point in time. The fixtures are good, but I'm going to be watching carefully because I really want him on the right. I want Mitoma to be back on the left. So we're just going to wait and see for 2 weeks on that one. Any thoughts?
I mean, I think your team looks sensational, to be honest.
You look flat.
Yeah, it's you're in a really strong position on paper.
Do you know what, though? I was thinking about this recently because obviously we look at a lot of other teams because of this pod and because of the SKLW tournaments and that sort of thing. There are so many situations at the moment where I think people can look at someone else's and have not very different players, but other players within the pool of sort of 30 players. Someone could have Mbeumo, the other person has Saka, someone has Thiago, the other one has Mateta, and they could understandably think the other team is brilliant.
People,
so it is that way.
People want what they can't have.
Yeah,
just human nature, isn't it? And this is the bonkers thing, and it's very difficult. It's difficult to feel satisfied with your own team for that reason. For anyone to, it's amazing how different teams are. I mean, it's just amazing that it's fallen this way. I don't know it's difficult to even explain why, but there are so many what we think are good picks that it's crazy. These teams are so different. I mean, our team was the same. We had the same team,
pretty much. Yeah.
2 weeks ago, we had the same team.
Yeah.
We had the same 15 players, apart from we differed in one position. I had Paquetá, you had Minte 2 weeks ago, and now we both now our teams are completely different. And everyone's got very, very different teams, and it is incredible. Yeah, I mean, and Jai, just to finish that slightly, I mean, did feel it. I hope it was starting to feel in that game like he was like, for God's sake, guys, am I going to have to do this on my own? Right, okay, I will then, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's what I meant about the Bruno thing, yeah.
And then, shooting a little bit more and just sort of taking it on himself a little bit more because he's so ridiculously good and he's still on that trajectory. He's an absurd player. So many of these players, again, like Bruno and Njai, like you just said, by the way, could easily have so many more points. And I'm not talking about bloody missed penalties or anything like that. I'm talking about everything else. I mean, so many with Njai, where he's played so many crosses. I mean, that other cross, in fact, was that overhead kick or something virtually from, was it better on the weekend? How was that saved?
Yeah.
But he put such a good cross in. He's so good. I mean, they have the two best players in the league at getting a cross in and it being a good cross. I can't think of anyone better in the league. I mean, you could argue Saka. He does it in a slightly different way. Sometimes he tucks inside onto his left and plays that great sort of looping ball. But put anyone into a one-on-one position, one-on-one with a defender, and you've got to get a cross in the box. Grealish and Njai are the best in the league. They're absurd at it. But Njai obviously has a lot of other things to his game. I do hope that he does take on that mantle a little bit more of being like, right, okay, am I really, somebody should be having that word with him because there's so much kind of expenditure from him on doing the defensive stuff and doing so much. And actually, he could be the game winner because he's got a great shot on him, a great finish on him, ridiculous technique, and he can do everything. So I don't know. Hopefully, he does move because at the moment he has everything as a pick, everything apart from the number 9s and who can finish the chances, and it's still just not quite gone his way. So I still think he's an incredible pick. Minte looked. I finished the game against United, and a text, like was talking to Zoff and Baker and Ella and Ivor and stuff, and said Minte just looks like a sensational. I said he looks like a very good pick to me at the moment. It's difficult with Minte, I know, because he is still cheap. But it's difficult to sort of always feel confident because he doesn't necessarily have those avenues, does he? He doesn't have all those avenues to points. But so he is kind of just a winger. But as someone who looks right on it in terms of confidence and sharpness and that extra kind of jump in his step and always being in the right place and always being willing to take someone on and shoot, and he's relentless. And I just thought, geez, I can really see that. I mean, I was thinking of Luke. I spoke to Luke like on the last day of his wild card, and he was trying to decide between Pope and Jai versus Raya and Minter. And I think that's quite an interesting decision. And I just immediately said Pope and Jai, to be honest, for various reasons, because it's a complex kind of choice, isn't it? And then obviously, and he's ended up going the other way because I had a look at his team because Gray had shared it or something as well. And I thought, fair play, because I hadn't really looked into enough as well. You know, it was just sort of a quick answer. And obviously the fixtures are very, very good, as you know, because you own him. But Leeds at home and then Palace, Brentford, Forest, Villa, West Ham. So, but yeah, he's one of them. Could get loads of points or could just be unlucky and not because the avenues aren't there.
I think that's the other thing. So I'm not, you know, I'm not going to try and sell him to anyone greatly, but his minutes have been outstanding. So he's getting 90 most weeks, which is really good. I think we remarked, didn't we, back 3 or 4 weeks ago when he was chasing around 90 in injury time against Chelsea, doing all of the legwork up top. I've spoken about preferring him on the right hand side. I don't think that's particularly shocking, but yeah, happy to have him in there and to see how it goes. But it's very much it's the most. If I had more transfers, I'd probably engineer that to Sarr. To tell you the truth, it is just one of those things, or even to move the Semenyo spot to Sarr. I don't know. And of course, Sarr has been doing well tonight. Apparently, he's got a brace. so
joking.
No, I'm just seeing it pop up now.
Yeah. Don't do it now, Ishmaela. Save it.
So yeah. So very exciting. But he's that player. But that's my point. Is Minter doesn't strike me as the kind of player who is going to brace. You know, I'd be if I can get one return in 2 from him. That's probably what I'm looking at, really. So it does feel like that kind of player. But his minutes are excellent, and he's playing well. So let's hope that one comes off.
Get Ishmael off. Rest. 2-0 up. He needs some rest in his legs. I better see him.
I think he will. When there's some point in the second half. Liverpool's starting lineup is terrible, by the way, from a relatively to expectations. So it's worth saying that. By the way, I'm just going to say one quick thing. I did get lucky in some ways with the switcheroo. People don't actually know what I did last week, do they? But Timber Pope, Gui, and who else? Saka came in, and who went out? Reinders, Jokeres. I have read the team out already, Eureka.
Oh, right. Have you? Sorry, my bad.
Before I get nags. But Raya and someone else went out.
So
Romero.
You did 4 transfers last week, and you've already made your 1 transfer this week, haven't you? Which is João Pedro to Mateta. Let's all be transparent. And so
spunked my load early. I don't know whether I'm allowed to say that, and it's a very unpleasant image, but yeah.
Yeah, so you've got no transfers now. You've made like 5 in the last, and that's why your team is very, very good.
I'm looking at the future weeks, and definitely next week, unless something horrible goes wrong, is an easy roll next week. So yeah. Anyway, and Rodon, very likely to be the guy that comes in, but even that's a bit of a debate, as we've talked about that a minute ago. I'm not sure. It's hard. I hate decisions like that because you don't really care, do you? You're into that for the gods with Rodon and Senesi. So anyway, let's not dwell on that. It's not very interesting for listeners. Let's be honest. Oh, yeah, I was just going to say that selling Reinders last week when it was a bit of a 50-50 was actually quite fortunate, I think, in the end. I think, we'll come to your team because he's someone that doesn't exist in your team anymore as well. Do you want to read this one out? Or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So at the moment, I've got, on the screen, it won't be my team on the weekend quite, but I've got Raya in goal, Senesi, Lacroix, Gabriel. I've got Bruno, Paquetá, Semenyo, Njai, Bumo, Jokeres and Haaland up front. Obviously, if Anderson is fit, I'll start him otherwise, I'll have a decision between Senesi and Goodmanson, but probably lean Senesi, to be honest, maybe. I had 3 free transfers. I've already made 2. So I did, and that was also a decision for me, by the way. So I've gone. We should probably talk about it briefly as well. So I did João Pedro down to Gui instead of Krupi Jr. Bit of a decision there. So that's just sort of making a bet of how that's going to go. And I did then I did Reinders to Boomo because they were the ones sort of changing in price. So I've still got another transfer. I've got loads of money. I don't know, 2.5 million or something.
Really?
So,
wow.
Yeah, something like that. So, obviously, ideally want to do Paquetá to Sarr. Yeah, 2.1 million. Ideally want to just do Paquetá to Sarr with the 3rd transfer. So I'm getting a little bit anxious now, actually. But I also thought, if it doesn't, that could be someone else. I could even get Enzo in him. I'm not really sort of wild about Enzo, but you could just go there for 3 or 4 weeks while the fixtures are good, or someone like that. Worst case scenario, or someone else. I'm just saying. I'm saying that more to kind of please whoever people are interested in. But I'm sure there are others if I can't get Sarr. But I'm not. I mean, there were 3 major problems there that I've sat on long enough and through the good fixtures and hoped for
Gui to Thiago.
Yeah. No, I mean, in this structure, I can do Paquetá to Sarr, and then if I wanted to, for example, in 2 weeks, I can do Gyökeres to Thiago and Jai to Saka. And then still have sort of over 500,000 in the bank, sort of thing. But so I don't really like that. I hate sort of saying that. I don't like it at all. I mean, this is all a function of the fact that things went badly for me in the start of the season. I got a lot of injuries, and then sort of wildcarded. So I wildcarded when I didn't have any transfers to carry over, and unfortunately didn't start with Gabriel on that wildcard. I started with Van Dijk instead, and Raya. Back in game week 4. So that meant having to get Raya Gabriel. 2 weeks later. So I've never really been able to get ahead with transfers. But I had 3 last week, and it was obviously very nice. I mean, 3 allows for a reasonable size restructure, doesn't it? But I still feel potentially a little bit behind with transfers for those reasons, and I still don't feel. I'm so kind of undecided on the whole Raya thing. I mean, I'm okay with it, of course, because he's the goalkeeper for Arsenal. I still feel like I don't quite have that ceiling, for example, that you have with a Pope and a Timber, and I still feel like that's the sort of team that'd be more likely to win FPL. That's where you're going to get those extra points if you do pop them, if you do get those few saves and those clean sheets, those bigger hauls, and obviously Timber as well. Whereas with Raya, it is kind of low. I mean, it was amazing on the weekend. He was I think 1 or 2 BPS from bonus, and he did for doing absolutely nothing. He made 1 save, and he had like 27 baseline or something, 25 or 27. He was very close to getting bonus Raya from doing nothing. So that's like, oh god, because you'd feel so much better about Raya if you just got a little 8 pointer here, 7 pointer there, that sort of thing. If he'd have made 2 quick saves, he'd have got him 2 or 3 points. If some buts, of course, but it was kind of amazing. But so yeah, you always feel a bit on edge with Raya going up against the others with sort of higher ceiling players, and and at the same time you see other people, like we just said, a lot of people are making that transfer to Raya now, and I'm like, oh right, okay, well, are they seeing something I'm not, or are they viewing it in a different way? And don't get me wrong, I know he's a very good keeper, and what I hope is that when I think like this, that I'm overestimating someone like Pope. I hope that. No offense to you, but that's my alternative. I know you've got Pope, but that's the alternative, and I'm not. Maybe Newcastle's defense doesn't end up being quite what it was or kind of has been. I don't know, but then he's still got the sort of saves to fall back on.
Yeah.
But obviously the defense feels a little bit on edge there at the moment with these injuries, which is not ideal. And I'm just going to have to roll it out for now. I still want to get my money's worth for Lacroix, who's been kind of frustrating, but still feel okay about him. But I'd like to go on.
No, I was going to say, I mean, people will want me to ask this, so I'm going to say that. I mean, Lacroix does it. It ties your hands a little bit, right? Because I know people might look at your bench with those 2 defenders that are possibly out this weekend, and they would say, "Well, you've got 2 million in the bank. Would you not consider using 1 million of them to go up from Anderson to Munoz?" But of course, double Palace defense when they're leggy doesn't feel like a bet I would take either.
No. I'm not, and again, I'm not quite kind of decided there. You know, there's sort of more information needed on the defense and the goalkeepers and what that looks like long term, really. Whereas, fingers crossed, the Sarr move, for example, you know, that is very much a long term. Like the information for me is there as far as I'm concerned in terms of what Paquetá is and what Sarr is, and wanting to get pieces in place to then allow me to focus on other stuff in the future. You know, for example, and so, you know, if hypothetically you did make that defender transfer this week, you're either rolling out 4 of them next week, or your transfer next week is already decided in Paquetá. I don't want that. I don't want to be in that situation ever, really. So, whereas with that defense, again, fingers crossed that everyone's fit, I can happily roll it out next week again. It's always there. They're always decent. They're always good.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah,
you do feel like you maybe you're holding on a little bit, but they're good, and they come into a period where they've got quite a lot of good fixtures. Actually, all of them. You know, Senesi and Anderson and Lacroix. So the defense is an interesting one. I suppose I want to talk about Bumo and Bruno a little bit, and I don't want to talk about Bruno too much. But I have to kind of feel like I have to respond a little bit to some of the things I've heard this week. I mean, in terms of Bruno as a pick, without kind of repeating the same things that I've already kind of said and thought. I mean, one of the reasons I own Bruno and think he's a good pick, or the reason I own Bruno and think he's a good pick, and it's not about this graph at all, by the way. I know we've got this bonus graph, and that's kind of separate conversation for me.
Yep.
But I don't know how you feel about Bruno, but one of the things that really winds me up, by the way, is when anybody says something like, "Yo, yeah, but what you're doing, you're getting this guy for DEFCON, or it's 9 million for DEFCON." Nobody, no sensible person or good player owns Bruno Fernandes for DEFCON. So why are people saying it? We don't need to say it. It's just not the truth. I own Bruno Fernandes because I think that he, first of all, for the individual that he is, and for the player that he is, in terms of he's an output merchant, right? I'm not talking about the avenues. I've talked about the avenues enough. I'm talking about the type of player he is. He is a goal scorer and an assister typically. Now I know the position has been a bit different, but I don't own Bruno Fernandes because I think he is a 6. You know, people a couple of weeks ago were saying he's a number 6. Or whatever. I've never seen him as a 6. I know he's there on the pitch, but that's, to me, and my subjective view, is that's never going to stay that way, you know, for good. Or Bruno's never going to be that person who's just sitting back as a 6 and the quarterback just didn't think and don't think that it was going to work out that way. So I always think that Bruno Fernandes is always going to be someone who does get the non-penalty XG, and the kind of the chances as well. You know, the assists as well. He's a difference maker. He always finds a way to get those kind of goals. And the other thing is, there's also kind of making a bet on Manchester United improving. You know, I do think, you know, they've got very good players, and I'm kind of hoping and thinking that you're making a bet. Yes, you've got this kind of cushion of all these different avenues, but I'm also expecting that if and when United improve a bit, because they've got such good players, by the way, you know, that's what you think. It's Sesko and Bumo and Cunha. That when the team improves, Bruno improves. When the team gets more of the ball or whatever it's doing, and the attack's better, Bruno gets forward more. And other things have happened, obviously, to facilitate that this week, which is great. But what I saw on the weekend was more. It wasn't about any of those things, about the DEFCONs, the avenues, the minutes. We know all that. It was more about I own him because of the positions that he can get into and the chances that he has and that he can get, which he had some great chances, by the way, a couple of great chances. Set up Bumo, you know, could have easily got an assist. Bumo probably should have scored that, hit the post. So, I mean, you know, I heard Late Risers, and he won't mind me saying this because we know we talk. Late Risers is a good friend of mine, and we chat all the time, so we won't mind that I'm saying this and sort of singling out what he said. But he said on the wire that he thought it was a lazy pick a couple of weeks ago, and that isn't true for me. You know, that sort of slightly gets my back up a little bit about Bruno Fernandes, because he's a lazy pick if he is what you, for example, LR, late riser, thinks he is. Then fine, he's a lazy pick. If you think that he was just a Def Connor, number 6, avenues to points, that's why people got him, then he is a lazy pick. But that's not why, for example, I got him. So, you know, so it's not about being a lazy pick. I got him for other reasons, because I think that he's going to be, and he might not. He might do none of those things. But you know what I mean? It's almost like it's all in the background. Those kind of additional avenues. That's a nice little cushion. So I hope that Bruno Fernandes continues to, because obviously we saw this sort of tactical shift as well with Man United, didn't we? Which was really nice to see. Where, and it's been talked about already. This is one of the problems we're going on Wednesday, and people have probably heard it all before. But obviously, the push, kind of Luke Shaw was the one, which was great. I hope he stays fit for this reason. He really pushed forward from the defence into the midfield to give us that kind of extra body in midfield, so we weren't getting overrun with just Casemiro and Fernandes. And then Fernandes was pushing forward more, so it was great because you could just see it was like, oh god, that extra man in there so much. So that was another sort of additional bonus. Like, oh, great, you know, that could be really good for Bruno. But I just thought it was a really positive performance from him again, and I'm just sort of happy to leave him there. But it's funny that it just makes me kind of laugh that it's such a controversial pick, or that people get so, you know, someone like when you think about all those things. I mean, people have owned Phil Foden for the last 4 weeks, and nobody's questioned Phil Foden, who's like, what is he, like 8 million? And he doesn't have any of those things Bruno's got. He doesn't have minutes, although I know he's had them recently. But when he bought him, more typically, he doesn't have the minutes. He doesn't have the set pieces. He doesn't have the penalties. He doesn't have the DEFCON. And all he's done is he scored some goals in 2023. And no one's questioning that pick, because it's kind of a, you know, perspective thing. You know, they're not even comparable as picks. So, a bit of a rant there. I hope that was reasonable. It's just kind of, you know, because you see what I'm saying? It's actually shows that table, because that was another kind of, you know, as bad as, you know, that's just, I think Bruno's on this as well. So, yeah, so, you know, it's not as non-pen XGI. Still, he's up there, and I just don't think we're even close to seeing what we could see from Bruno in terms of an open threat and from United. So it's a bit of a bet of what you just kind of think they're going to see. As I say, with the kind of additional routes, but that's quite nice, you know, right up there on non-penalty XGI in terms of with some play.
It's worth saying as well. I know this is obvious, really, to most people who've followed him or owned him. He's really only had a couple of good fixtures on paper, and Man United are looking better than they have at any point this season so far. Maybe bar that period with the Arsenal game where they were surprisingly good. I mean, you'll know better than me. But you know, this looks like a great time to double up. So I think that's the thing. It's certainly not in. Obviously, you know, you were talking about Bryan and Mbeumo, etc. Double up, fine, not an issue there. Would it come at the expense of Bruno? No, I still don't think so.
No,
but I don't think many people are saying that unless they really, really need the money, etc. But
and it's difficult because I'm doubled up there now, and I don't know. We'll have to see. I guess that is a kind of a big bet, but I don't, as you just said, I don't really view them as a double up so much. I don't really see them as two together. I just see them as the individuals that they are, and it just so happens that they play for the same team, which is possibly unfortunate because, if United are crap and they fall apart, then whatever. But both within their own rights are both, to me at the moment, very good picks for different reasons, and therefore I want them both because I wouldn't. Bruno for me, I would just definitely have, because I still think he's great, and as I've said before, you can have all the other guys alongside him, so it's fine with me for my team. But yeah, Mbeumo. I mean, God, Bryan and Mbeumo. It's obviously a shame that I've not owned him yet. I mean, if only I'd have got him instead of Cunha, and that when Cunha practiced early in the season, my whole, who knows where I'd be or whatever, my whole season would be in a very different place, with a wild card at a different time and everything. But wow, I mean, kind of amazing with Mbeumo, because it's a little bit frustrating, because I've been saying for 2 years that I think he's an incredibly underrated player, and I kind of still think he is. I've been saying for a long time that he's properly world class, like properly incredible. Do you remember when last season we used to talk about a lot, and it was like, and yeah, I know you said it well and whatever, we agreed, but it's not about that. It's just like saying that, like, this guy's, I was saying, he's like as good as Saka. This guy's that kind of level, an unbelievable player. But what I've loved to see at United recently is, I expected him to carry on like that because he's so class, because he has that sort of confidence. But what I didn't necessarily expect is that there's just that little bit of attitude almost that I almost didn't really see.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like those sort of celebrations where he's like, I'm the big boy, I'm the daddy, I'm not bothered. I know, Bruno, I know you're here, I know you're kind of the captain. Cunha, I know you're here, I know you're amazing. But I'm the daddy, I'm not bothered at all. Like, I'm gonna sort this out. I'll do my job. And it was like, ooh, yeah, that's a bit ridiculous, actually, and just kind of caught me off guard almost in terms of what Boomer is for United. So, and again, but he is a player without really the avenues apart from some corners and stuff from one side, which is decent, and some free kicks. But he is that kind of open play kind of threat, isn't he? So, yeah, what do you think about?
No, I'm 90% certain that if I hadn't spent 4 transfers last week, I'd be engineering a route for him in, and I'd also be with Sarr. So it's one of those ridiculous scenarios, isn't it? Sometimes it's about what week happens to you. It's a bit like the difference between wildcard 6 and 7 or 8 or whatever it is. Often it's what week things happen in that determines quite a lot. In Jai, for example, is anyone going to bring him in? I mean, they might do, but generally speaking, they wouldn't. If you're on wildcard 8, you just don't have him, and you probably won't bring him in. And AFCON is an excuse, and that kind of thing. But if you're on wildcard 6, you've got him probably. And then Buemo is it's probably going to be that for anyone wildcarding or doing a mini kind of wildcard within their own team around now. He's going to be there. I'm fairly certain of that. But yeah, good moves. Can't argue with that. And I like the fact that you've retained a couple of high value players in obviously the Gyökeres situation. You do still have that ability to go up somewhere at some point. I think one of the things that's keeping me relatively snuggled under the duvet is obviously for the next 2. No matter what one thinks, at least Saka has these incredible 2, probably very good fixtures, and then one can reevaluate after that. Because I do like the Mbeumo spot.
Yeah. And what do you think, by the way, just quickly, I know we'll finish soon, but I don't think we really talked about the triple Arsenal defence option.
Yeah, we've talked about it in previous weeks, but of course it's become more kind of pertinent. I don't know. I mean, I have what I consider to be the best 3 picks, so I'm not going to be doing anything to engineer and move it around now. I still have a little bit of a reservation over Calafiore's minutes because I still look at them and it's kind of just worries me enough. They're very keen and comfortable on playing Lewis Skelly in some fairly big games. So I still think if you're going to triple up, you probably are going to have the goalkeeper because you had him already, and then you'll be adding Timber. I think that's the one, isn't it, that people will be probably adding in. And of course, White starting tonight. What does that mean? I don't know. But yeah, I do like it. Whether I'd want to keep it forever, I don't know. I haven't really thought about that enough. But it's more about the absence of being really confident in an Arsenal attacker against their relative equal. Like, if Palmer was knocking about, I wouldn't have Saka, would I, realistically? So it is one of those things, isn't it? It is only because of the situation we find ourselves in. But yeah, I don't hate it at all. Would I be moving around and doing lots of transfers to achieve it? Probably not. It hit me during a week last week when I moved things around and got Pope in and put Timber where he is, it's partly because last week, how many good defenders were available to me or anyone moving last week? It was a crap week to bring anyone in because, you can't bring Palace in at Arsenal. There were lots of other situations. You're happy to play, your Leeds defenders, that sort of thing. Sunderland were away at Chelsea, blah, blah, blah. So it was quite an awkward one. But yeah, no, I do like it. It's hard to argue. I think there will become a time where we're a bit twitchy because the fixtures they're a little bit more awkward to call in 2 or 3 weeks' time. So yeah, what do you think?
No, it's a very difficult one. I mean, I just think you. I mean, obviously it depends on which three, but if it's the defenders, if it's three defenders, you lose really all of that potential value that you've got in your other two cheap defenders.
Yeah,
because are you ever gonna? I mean, I suppose I don't know. Liverpool away. I don't know. Maybe it's going to be difficult benching edits. You're never really going to want to bench any of them, basically.
Yeah, Gabriel's a never.
Well, yeah, Gabriel's a never bench, obviously, and to be honest, Timber's a never bench.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult because then all of a sudden you've not got this. There's it's very nice having 2-3 defenders that are cheap, that are all very good in their own right, that you can kind of rotate and get that kind of good fixture out of them, and you probably lose that with the triple defenders, and at the cost of not having a Saka, or a Gyökeres even, but let's just say Saka, which is big. And I think if it's Raya, if it's a third and it's Raya, it doesn't really make enough sense to me, because I just don't. The gap between Raya and someone else just isn't big enough, is it? You would think.
I think
I'm not really wild about it. I mean, if someone wants to go all out, and go Calafiori and Timber and Gabriel, there's never been a time like it. There's never been an option more than that.
Certainly as a kind of short-term play. I don't mind that at all. And I think Raya, you have as part of the triple up if he's there already, but bringing him in, I don't know, doesn't really sit right with me personally. But there you go. Actually, a few people have asked this whilst we've been talking, but would you consider doing Njai to Sarr?
No, to be honest. I don't know. Like, surely that you've got someone better that you can sell now, right now, with what's he got? Sunderland, and then he's got. Doesn't he got
Fulham?
Sunderland and Fulham. I mean, this is what I mean. He's just not done the points. People are getting really frustrated by like these sort of guys who've not done the points, but he just looks absolutely incredible, Njai. So I really wouldn't want to be doing that move, to be honest.
I mean, I was in that situation this week in a sense, admittedly only with one move, and it didn't really cross my mind. So
just feels like a couple of weeks early, because when I might sell him, if I've got that luxury, if I've got those.
Yeah, it's the AFCON week, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I might sell him in 2 weeks, because I've got to find, if I want to get Saka and Thiago, for example, I've got to find someone to sell, and the fixtures turn, quite considerably for him then prior to AFCON. He's got United away, Newcastle at home, Bournemouth away. Then he's got Forest. Then he's got Chelsea away if he's here, and Arsenal at home if he's here. So the fixtures do turn, but the next two, even though I'm not even going to say even though it's Sunderland, still Sunderland. The next two are good, good fixtures. Yeah.
Cool. All right, I'll drop the team there. I'll leave that. Cool. Okay. If you've made it this far, I wanted to first of all thank you for sticking with us as usual. We're slightly shorter this week, bit disappointing. We're sort of 15 minutes less than last week, so apologies. We just couldn't, we're fatigued. It's all these midweek fixtures and European games and that sort of thing. It takes its toll, So yeah. I think that's probably going to be all from us, Danny, this week. I think I'll just say again, if you're sticking with us and you have done this long, I have meant to mention, please do press the likes and subscribes and so on if you get this far. And if you want to share, that's very kind. Keep those nice comments coming, and even after this is published, because that does make us look back on them, and we can answer perhaps one or two of your questions if you haven't been able to submit in time, that sort of thing as well. So that sounds good. But hopefully the teams look all right this week, Danny, which means a solid 22-pointer each, I should imagine. Usually that's how it works.
Yeah. I was just looking at the chat, and Aaron in the chat's asking, do we do team reviews? We never really did them, and then we sort of just forget. I mean, I don't know, comment if you think we should talk about last week's. I mean, I probably should. That's why I tried to squeeze it in at the start, because I know I always like to hear when someone's done really badly, and I got 39 points, and that's why I was trying to squeeze it in, to be honest, because I know that I quite like to know that other people have done badly when I've had a bad week. So I had a shocker, as I say, and a red arrow from I was about 500k to 780k. I've not even looked what rank I am actually.
I mean,
but no,
do you know what? I haven't made an explicit thing about no rank check this year, have I?
Well, that's the other thing, yeah. So to answer that question is Richie normally goes through the whole season without looking at his rank, and that's why when we started doing this pods, we didn't include reviews, to be honest.
Yeah, if you want them, please
because
do.
He knew he wasn't having his best season last season. Really, that's what it was. And whereas
How dare
I was
you?
having a good season, so he couldn't do it. So
I'm going to throw my gloves to the floor and get out my rapier. Hopefully, people understand what I'm talking about. Otherwise, that will sound quite phallic.
yeah,
But no, what did I got 54, and I have Mr. Joseph Rodon, and that made all the difference. Danny was thrilled for me; he was really happy.
But yeah, if people think we should just show our team, then let us know. I mean, I don't know. I don't really mind either way. But obviously, we need to then get much more efficient and cut other stuff out so we don't go too long.
Yeah. Because we're looking at Godfather.
We could show it for 5 minutes, maybe, but whatever.
Yeah. Cool. If nothing else, I can always tweet them out, I suppose, at the same time as well. That's another thing. Cool. Okay, well, we'll leave it there, but something to think on. But yeah, do send in suggestions and things you'd like to see. We have our annual performance review every now and again. Danny has to come into my office, and I try and work out if he's performing at the standard expected, whether he's going to get a pay rise, from a curly whirly or a Mars bar or whatever it is I send every 6 months.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, we're going to let you go because I know that you're all chomping at the bit for celebrity traitors, and I'm probably expected next door to so that we can start that. Cool. Anyway, enjoy your weekends, and we'll see you here next week, bright and early. And thank you for joining us this evening, and good luck in your game weeks.
Nice one. See you later.